After 8 days of using the soul crystals and the immense blood aura of the demon-sealing tombstone, Qianlai finally made a complete recovery. His soul energy and blood finally reached the levels they had been at before the soul-suppressing orb initially drained them from him. His blood flowed vigorously, and his soul shone bright with energy. As of right now, his tokens, as well as the tokens his companions possessed, had been rendered useless. Their group had completely vanished from the radars of the Eastern barbarians and the three forces. Since Song Tingyu, Xia Jingxian, Luochan, Du Xiangyang, Pan Xianxian, and Xuemoyan still needed to maintain their shields of light, they were sitting and using spirit stones to replenish their spirit energy. Qianlai, however, stood exposed to the forbidden land of ice. Having frozen the demon-sealing tombstone with the power of frost, he surveyed the landscape before him, eyes narrowed. Out of everyone in the group, he was the only one who didn't protect himself with a shield of light, instead leaving himself vulnerable to the harsh, frigid winds. The cold, bone-chilling air of the forbidden land of ice could cut through flesh like blades of frost. This place was a nightmare for most people who entered, but Qianlai was an exception. As someone who had tempered his flesh and blood with the cold of the land underneath the Arctic mountain range, Qianlai was able to adapt to this environment easily. He even felt extremely comfortable. After replenishing his soul energy and blood, Qianlai once again had absolute control over his body and his Dantian spirit sea. As he stood in this freezing land, he circulated his frost spirit art. With just a thought, his aura changed in a split second, his gentle eyes abruptly becoming icy. The frigid air of the forbidden land of ice rushed toward him from every direction, entering his pores and flooding into his Dantian spirit sea at his command. Wisps of frigid air turned into cold white mist, which then progressed into extremely cold clusters of clouds that hovered around Qianlai's 3 frost natal palaces. Since they expanded during his crisis earlier, the 3 frost natal palaces absorbed the cold energy on their own accord and merged it into the space within them. All 3 gradually filled with frost energy. Time slowly passed, and 1 hour later, the 3 frost natal palaces resembled translucent balls of ice that had been completely filled with frost energy. Rays of icy light shone from Qianlai's cold, narrowed eyes. He raised his eyebrows involuntarily. Although his frost natal palaces were full to the brim with frost energy, they continued to absorb more. The absorption process wasn't stopping. 3 wisps of soul consciousness entered Qianlai's frost natal palaces, writhing around like ethereal tentacles. He could see freezing wisps of white light flowing throughout the spaces within his natal palaces like snakes. They appeared to be devouring the frost energy that had been gathered from the outside, opening and closing their bloody maws. These frigid snakes seemed to be streams of clouds formed from frost energy. One end of each snake seemed to stretch out of Qianlai's body, connecting to the forbidden land of ice, while the other end was greedily eating up the frost energy in his frost natal palaces. As the snake-like streams of clouds continued to consume the stored frost energy, Qianlai's frost natal palaces began to resonate with icy cracking noises. It seemed as if the spaces within them were expanding, freezing everything around them to turn everything into a world of ice. At the same time, thousands of icy lights burst from Qianlai's 3 frost natal palaces like sharp arrows, heading in every direction. His other 6 natal palaces, 3 thunder and 3 earth, underwent an abrupt change in response, discharging the power of thunder, lightning, and earth. As a result, his spirit sea became chaotic once more, embroiled in intense conflict. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Qianlai's wisp of consciousness split into several pieces, each spreading to different positions of his spirit sea like shadows. All of a sudden, it was as if countless eyes were closely watching the world within Qianlai's spirit sea. They hovered deep within the 9 sun-like natal palaces and examined every minuscule change inside of them, trying to figure out what was making them behave so strangely. This time, Qianlai had plenty of soul energy, and his blood thrived with life. He had plenty of power to support his spirit sea and make sure it endured the fighting. Bang! While Qianlai focused on the world of his spirit sea, the ice surrounding the demon-sealing tombstone exploded without warning. Before he could react, the 7 divine lights within it blossomed and transformed into 7 divine chains that actually writhed toward him. In an instant, the demon-sealing tombstone flew over to hover above his head. Divine light shone down upon him like a colorful shield of light that enveloped his entire body. Qianlai opened his eyes, instantly discovering that all of the frost energy that had converged on him from all over the forbidden land of ice and surged into his spirit sea had completely vanished. The intense conflict within his Dantian spirit sea came to an abrupt halt. The powers of earth and thunder withdrew into their respective natal palaces, and the 3 frost natal palaces no longer unleashed icy beams of light. Even the frigid clouds shaped like snakes no longer greedily devoured the frost energy within the icy worlds of each frost natal palace. Everything had returned to normal. Just before they shackled Qianlai, the 7 divine chains came to a stuttering stop and withdrew back into the demon-sealing tombstone hovering above him, quick as lightning. All of the frost energy that had rushed into his spirit sea dissipated after the demon-sealing tombstone arrived, exiting Qianlai's body and flowing in a specific direction. The demon-sealing tombstone emitted a shrill noise, as if it wanted to chase after that energy and prevent it from escaping. Before it could fly away, Qianlai reacted instantly and grabbed hold of it, restraining it despite his astonishment. It was then that he realized what had been going on. The strange things occurring in his spirit sea, how his frost natal palaces were behaving aggressively and his thunder and earth natal palaces acted in retaliation. None of that was his fault. He had actually been invaded by a foreign entity. The frost energy that had flooded his spirit sea contained the aura of the ice spirit. It may have even possessed a tiny amount of its consciousness. The ice spirit had secretly entered Qianlai's spirit sea as he cultivated his frost spirit art, attempting to use the frost energy as a vessel and alter his frost natal palaces. The ice spirit tried to use the frost energy to secretly gain control over him. Qianlai's 6 other natal palaces had detected that the aura inside of his 3 frost natal palaces didn't belong to him, which was why they fought against it. The aura and consciousness of the ice spirit existed within all of the frigid air in the forbidden land of ice. Absorbing the frost energy in the air was the same voluntarily granting the ice spirit entry to his natal palaces. If Qianlai had continued to do so, allowing his 3 frost natal palaces to expand unchecked, the consciousness of the ice spirit probably would have superseded his own. Even his true soul would have been taken over. Qianlai took a deep breath, breaking out in a cold sweat. If the demon-sealing tombstone hadn't taken action, forcing the cold air infused with the ice spirit's consciousness to retreat, he probably would have fallen prey to the ice spirit's influence. Then a realization occurred to Qianlai. Just like how the wood spirit attempted to use Yi Hao to escape the graveyard of gods, the ice spirit probably wants to leave using a martial practitioner who cultivates a frost spirit art and can endure its power. Yi Hao and the wood spirit had cooperated with each other, reaching an agreement that left his soul free and independent. They had shared a symbiotic relationship which was relatively normal. The ice spirit's methods, however, were far more malevolent and domineering. It didn't seek a symbiotic relationship. It was looking for someone to outright dominate. It would quietly take over that person's body and soul without them realizing it. The ice spirit's aura mingled with all of the frigid air that existed in the forbidden land of ice. That meant it was probably even more powerful than the wood spirit and thunder spirit. Having realized all of this, Qianlai no longer dared to cultivate his frost spirit art. Without the demon-sealing tombstone, the ice spirit could have invaded him and he never would have known. This entire situation had been an extremely close call. Qianlai, Song Tingyu said, getting to her feet and approaching him after awakening from her meditative recovery. Why do you look so shocked? You're extremely pale. What happened? Her words jolted the others from their own meditative states, causing them to stare at Qianlai out of curiosity and worry. Something happened, Qianlai said, brow deeply furrowed. He took some time to explain his earlier predicament from beginning to end along with all of the revelations that came with it. The ice spirit is clearly choosing martial practitioners who cultivate frost spirit arts, possess high realms, and are able to endure its frost energy, he eventually exclaimed. Its methods are devious, gradually encroaching upon a person from within until it completely dominates them. Realizing the gravity of Qinlai's harrowing experience, shock filled Du Xiangyang's face. Not only is this ice spirit extremely intelligent, it might even be the most powerful of the 7 spirits. The ice spirit is capable of spreading its consciousness through the frigid air of the forbidden land of ice. This means that its soul is extremely powerful, Song Tingyu said with somber eyes. It clearly knows where the land of buried gods is. Maybe the miracles in the land of buried gods helped it evolve and obtain such an obscene power. We definitely need to be careful, Xie Jingxian exclaimed softly. The white Eastern barbarian girl we saw a few days ago, the one called Jiayu, also cultivates a frost spirit art. Shui Moyan frowned slightly, thinking carefully for a moment before saying, unlike you, she cultivates only that frost spirit art. All 9 of the natal palaces in her spirit sea should be frost natal palaces. Neither her body nor her ability to endure frost energy are stronger than yours, Xie Jingxian added. Yet she may very well be one of the ice spirit's targets. Qin Lai's eyes shone with an odd light. After a moment of contemplation, he spoke. If we encounter the white barbarians again, I'll let them know. Atop an icy stone, Jiayu of the white barbarian tribe sat with her legs crossed, her eyes closed. Wisps of cold white mist surrounded her. Her beautiful, snow-white face flowed with an icy luster, almost like it was made of translucent crystal. The air around her grew increasingly cold. Some time later, she opened her eyes. Rays of icy light as sharp as blades could be seen in her pupils. Hee hee. This forbidden land of ice is wonderful. She smiled with joy. I've been improving by leaps and bounds since I got here. She looked at Gao Yu, who was standing beside her. I don't know why, but I find myself ill at ease when you cultivate using the frost energy in the air. Whenever he was alone with Jiayu, Gao Yu would stow away his grim expression. However, this made him look somewhat stiff and aloof instead. I cultivate the 9 Hell Wandering Soul record. My soul perception is extremely sensitive, and I can vaguely detect an aura in the air that isn't yours. An aura that isn't mine? Jiayu asked, yet continued to smile. Whose aura might that be? It's too weak for me to tell, Gao Yu said with a shake of his head. I'm not even sure if I'm just being paranoid. Don't think about it too much, she exclaimed excitedly. I'm feeling fantastic. My natal palaces are magically expanding, which means that they can contain even more frost energy, and I'll grow even stronger. That sounds like a good thing, Gao Yu replied stiffly. Of course it's a good thing. Sen Yi, Difei, and I may all be in the late stage of the Nether Passage realm, but they're stronger than I am. This has been a source of disappointment among the elders of my tribe. The excitement in Jia Yu's eyes died down for a second. Then she immediately grew happy again and exclaimed, however, if my natal palaces undergo a new period of expansion and my strength increases by 20 to 30%, I'm confident that I won't be at a disadvantage in a match against either Sen Yi or Difei. She paused, taking a deep breath to regain her composure. This is what the tribe elders expect of me, she exclaimed seriously. I won't let them down. Gao Yu simply nodded in response, not bothering to say anything else. He agreed with Jia Yu. The cold air containing another aura wasn't a big deal. A dragon made of blood energy roared soundlessly as it bit into a barbarian wearing bright red clothing. This scarlet barbarian immediately felt his blood boil over, his spirit energy becoming chaotic. Boom! Qin Lai struck with the astral thunder hammer, smashing that barbarian's bones to bits. Splurt! Luo Chun stabbed his sword into the chest of another scarlet barbarian, piercing the man's heart and ending his life. In another part of the area, Du Xiangyang and Shui Moyan killed 3 other scarlet barbarians. This battle took place halfway up a mountain with a glacier running down its length. For the past half-month, Qin Lai's group had been running into scarlet barbarians, and they had just exterminated their 3rd wave of them. How much further is the ice spirit? Du Xiangyang crouched to the ground and searched through the remains of the scarlet barbarians, checking if any had spirit materials or spirit stones. "We're close," Qinlai answered nonchalantly. "Scarlet barbarians are the only people we've encountered for the past 2 weeks," Song Tingyu interjected. "It's a good thing our tokens can't transmit our location. Otherwise, Di Fei and the rest of his scarlet barbarians would be able to track us easily." Qinlai's group was currently moving through a part of the forbidden land of ice with many scarlet barbarians. Groups of 15 were scattered throughout the area, searching everywhere for the ice spirit. Qinlai's group had run into 3 of these groups in a row. The boisterous mouths of every scarlet barbarian told them that their leader was Di Fei. They weren't sure what kind of method Di Fei had at his disposal, but he had roughly identified where the ice spirit was and brought his tribesmen over. However, the scarlet barbarians only had a vague idea of where it was, so they split into smaller teams and spread out to search for it. Qinlai's group had killed 3 of those teams, adding up to a total of 45 scarlet barbarians. "Let's get out of here as soon as possible. This team sent a message before fighting us," Du Xiangyang said as he stood up, having searched the bodies. "It's likely that another team of those savages is rushing here as we speak." "Amen," Shui Moyan agreed. "If we're unlucky enough to run into that Di Fei, we may get trapped here." "Is Di Fei that strong?" Luo Chen asked, raising an eyebrow. "Di Fei is extremely capable. Like San Yi, he is the leader of the Scarlet Barbarian tribe's younger generation," Shui Moyan said, explaining what she knew about the Eastern barbarians. "Di Fei cultivates the power of Earth. The Eastern barbarians refer to him as the Son of Earth. He is rumored to be quite powerful, having possessed monstrous physical strength from birth." "How does he compare to San Yi?" Du Xiangyang asked in a grim tone. "They're equally matched. Jiayu, the white barbarian girl we encountered earlier, is considered weaker than the 2 of them. However," Shui Moyan took a moment to think, "this is the forbidden land of ice. Jiayu shouldn't be any weaker than them here. At any rate, we need to be careful." While they were speaking, Qinlai took out the demon sealing tombstone to once again confirm the direction they would move in. Whoosh! It emerged from his spatial ring like a brilliant beacon, the dazzling divine lights inside of it resembling the luminescent tail feathers of a colorful peacock. Powerful energy radiated from the demon sealing tombstone. Despite being restrained by Qinlai, it shook and trembled, clearly having an intense reaction to something. Everyone's eyes lit up at the same time. "We're about to reach it," Qinlai shouted. He shoved the demon sealing tombstone back into his spatial ring and took a deep breath. An immense aura of refined blood energy emanated from him. "Let's go!" Like a ray of bloody light, Qinlai shot toward the peak of the mountain. The rest of the group grew excited as they rushed to follow him. An hour after their departure, 2 groups of scarlet barbarians arrived in that same area. "This is the 3rd team!" A young scarlet barbarian roared in a low, raspy voice. He was clearly a head shorter than everyone else, but he had a large physique. Although this barbarian was short, he gave off a shocking aura. He was incredibly conspicuous and only needed to stand there to seem valiant. The 30 scarlet barbarians that made up the 2 teams he commanded were tall and burly. Plenty had extraordinary auras as well. In spite of this, all of them looked at the young scarlet barbarian with reverence. "Young master, the enemy has discarded their tokens. We are unable to track them properly," a scarlet barbarian exclaimed in a heavy voice. "We'll meet them soon enough." The scarlet barbarian tribe leader, Di Fei, gave him a savage grin. "They have the demon sealing tombstone, so they're here for the ice spirit as well. We'll definitely encounter them in this area. What should we do now?" one of his subordinates asked. "Contact everybody," Di Fei ordered. "Tell them to join forces with other teams, so they won't be eliminated one after another. Then head in this direction." "Understood. Relax," Di Fei exclaimed with a cold snort. "Someone is going to help us find them." "Wow! Everyone, look!" Pan Qianshan cried, having reached the peak of the glacial mountain. "What a huge lake! It's so beautiful!" Qinlai and the others rushed up to join her, looking into the distance. The scenery brought expressions of amazement to all of their faces. In the center of numerous mountains, nestled by clouds, sat an enormous frozen lake. The ice that made up its surface resembled a gigantic, wondrous mirror. No one could tell just how thick it actually was. Qianlai's group stood at the top of a mountain, one of many that surrounded the frozen lake. Behind and around them were more snow-covered mountains and even glaciers. Hundreds of thousands of enormous icy masses could be seen in the distance, connected to one another to form a ring with the lake at its center. The air above the frozen lake was bone-chillingly cold. Frigid winds howled, weaving between the nearby mountains. The winds that can instantly freeze people to death probably originated from this lake, Du Xiangyang said, taking a deep breath. This icy lake must be the very center of the forbidden land of ice. The ice spirit should be inside of it as well. Qianlai, do you want to use the demon sealing tombstone to make sure? Song Tingyu asked. No need, Qianlai said confidently, shaking his head. The ice spirit should be at the bottom of this lake. How about the land of buried gods? Xianxia asked, her eyes alight. Could it be at the bottom of the lake as well? Maybe the forbidden land of ice's absolute power of frost completely froze it. The moment she said this, everyone's eyes burned with excitement. They all inwardly rejoiced, realizing they had finally reached their destination, the heart of the graveyard of gods. So the ice spirit is hidden deep within this frozen lake? Eh? A voice suddenly echoed from a snowy mountain peak nearby. I guess Di Fei wasted his efforts on the wrong area. Qianlai's group looked in the direction the voice came from. A person could be seen atop a mountain peak to their left. Noticing their gazes, that person grinned and said, How long has it been since we last saw each other? Senior Sister Shui? Jiang Tianxing. Shui Moyan's beautiful face suddenly went cold. Who? Qianlai exclaimed softly. Oh, it's that guy. Song Tingyu burst into laughter. Jiang Tianxing's gaze swept over Shui Moyan to land on Song Tingyu. You bitch, he yelled. Where's that kid that was with you back then? Are you talking about me? Qianlai said with a grin. You? Jiang Tianxing's eyes abruptly became a frightening crimson. Qianlai smiled, took out the fox skin mask, and put it on. He took a moment to adjust it and give himself a new face, then said, Now do you recognize me? So it was you. Qianlai, Jiang Tianxing cried. Half a year ago, Jiang Tianxing led a group of martial practitioners who cultivated the blood spirit art to fight the god corpse in the sea near Sea Moon Island and obtain the demon sealing tombstone inside of its navel. In the end, Qianlai appeared out of nowhere and took the demon sealing tombstone, ruining the plan that Jiang Tianxing had put so much effort into. He and Celestial Artifact Sect's elder Baiyu then searched everywhere for Qianlai and Song Tingyu, hoping to find them and seize the tombstone for themselves. Unfortunately, they never did. No one knew more about the miracles of the demon-sealing tombstone than Jiang Tianxing, and no one needed it more than he did. As a matter of fact, everything the 9 great silver rank forces knew about the graveyard of gods, as well as the first headless god corpse that had appeared at the bottom of the sea, had been revealed by Jiang Tianxing and his father Jiang Zhuzhe. Taking out a horn, his eyes overflowing with anger, Jiang Tianxing blew a long, low note that echoed through the mountains. Boo-wer! Jiang Tianxing then put the horn away. I've signaled Di Fei. He and his scarlet barbarians will be here shortly. He laughed coldly. I wonder how you'll escape this time. Jiang Tianxing howled into the sky and its harsh, frigid winds, his eyes flashing with bloody light. Qianlai and the others tensed up, immediately becoming more vigilant. They instinctively took out their spirit artifacts to prepare for any sudden changes. They hadn't expected that Jiang Tianxing would be in cahoots with Di Fei of the Scarlet Barbarian tribe. His actions made it seem like they were close allies. We've killed numerous Scarlet Barbarians, Du Xiangyang said, his expression grim. That Di Fei has definitely been searching for us. It'll be difficult to escape once he arrives. Every barbarian in the graveyard of gods is in the Nether Passage realm. Song Tingyu furrowed her brow. If we fight all 3 tribes, we won't have any hope of prevailing. But the ice spirit is at the bottom of that frozen lake. And the land of buried gods could also be down there. We've gone through so much to get here. Are we just going to give up? Pan Xianxian's hands were balled into fists, her face filled with frustration. Jiang Tianxing also knows that the ice spirit is here. Once Di Fei arrives, he'll discover this as well. If we allow them to break through the ice and the land of buried gods really is down there, we'll have gained absolutely nothing. Qin Lai was silent, judging by the expressions of his companions. He could see that everyone deeply yearned to enter the land of buried gods. None of them wanted to give up. Di Fei of the Scarlet Barbarian tribe would soon arrive with his tribesmen. The black and white barbarians were probably close as well. Qin Lai's group didn't have the power to fight against all of the eastern barbarians. Even if the other forces of the Land of Chaos, Black Voodoo Cult, the Three Great Families, 10,000 Beast Mountain, and Celestial Artifact Sect were thrown into the mix, they still wouldn't be able to face all of the barbarians. Don't count on any reinforcements? Jiang Tianxing suddenly snarled, licking his lips. Within the Forbidden Land of Ice, only 5 Land of Chaos martial practitioners are left. Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli of Black Voodoo Cult, Feng Eo of Celestial Artifact Sect, you men of 10,000 Beast Mountain, and Su Yan of the Su family. We've killed everyone else. Even Lin Dongxing and Xiahou Yuan. The smile on Jiang Tianxing's face showed how increasingly arrogant he was becoming. They might be able to find this place, but even if they did, they'd just be courting death. Ha ha ha. Upon hearing him say this, everyone grew even more anxious. Out of everyone from the forces in the Land of Chaos, only some of the ringers, the so-called geniuses, remained. Even Lin Dongxing and Xiahou Yuan from 2 of the 3 great families had been killed. If that truly were the case, then who could oppose to the eastern barbarians in the Forbidden Land of Ice? Song Tingyu subconsciously looked at Qin Lai. Qin Lai's eyebrows were tightly knit. He didn't know what to do. We don't have any tokens for them to track us through. If we leave, they won't be able to pin us down. Du Xiangyang sighed. Should we survive until the exit portals are opened, we might be able to get out of here alive. He clearly wanted to retreat. With just our strength alone, we probably won't be able to steal anything from the eastern barbarians, Luochan said, dissatisfaction on his face. What do you think? Xuemoyan looked at Qin Lai. Everyone else turned to look at him as well. At this moment, he had the power to decide what they would do. The entire group had chosen to follow him. Without hesitation, Qin Lai spoke in a solemn tone. I want to meet Di Fei. These words made everyone freeze. Even if 200 Scarlet Barbarians entered the Graveyard of Gods, between the fighting throughout the Forbidden Lands of Metal, Earth, and Water, and freezing to death in the Forbidden Land of Ice, there should only be around half of them left. Qin Lai spoke in a frosty tone, his eyes calm as he continued. We killed 3 teams of Scarlet Barbarians, 45 barbarians in the Nether Passage realm overall. This should leave about 50 or so Scarlet Barbarians. Everyone wore pensive expressions. We've fought these Scarlet Barbarians. We know that, individually, their strength isn't much. Qin Lai looked at each of them one by one, his eyes bright. On our side we have Luochun, Xuemoyan, and you, Du Xiangyang. Out of everyone here, you 3 are the most outstanding. Jingxian and Tingyu are strong as well, having cultivated to the late stages of the Nether Passage realm. Even Pan Xianxian is in the middle stage of the Nether Passage realm. Her individual strength is greater than that of Scarlet Barbarians in the same realm. Qin Lai paused for a moment, then excitedly said, As of now, our only enemies are the Scarlet Barbarians. Before the Black and White Barbarians get here, we have a chance. At this moment, everyone's thoughts of retreating vanished. Their eyes shone with determination, their spirits alight once more. All right, then we'll stay and fight. I want to see what makes Di Fei so special. We've suppressed these Eastern barbarians for years. Do they really think they can do whatever they want in the Graveyard of Gods? The decision was made. They weren't going to retreat. Ignoring Jiang Tianxing, who stood at the peak of a neighboring mountain, they dug a cave out of their own icy mountain peak and settled in. Each of them took out spirit stones and silently began to replenish their spirit energy. They tried to make the process as fast as possible, preparing for the arrival of the Scarlet Barbarians. Jiang Tianqing went still at the sight of Qin Lai's group resting in plain sight. He hadn't expected them to be so audacious and choose not to escape when they knew that the strongest combatants of the Scarlet Barbarian tribe were approaching. Ha! Birds die for food, and people die for wealth. Jiang Tianqing smirked as he sent a message to Di Fei. He secretly left the mountain, moving closer to Qin Lai's group, just for the ice spirit and the remains of elites in the land of buried gods. Looks like they don't want to live. 2 hours later, a barbarian dressed in scarlet carrying an enormous bow appeared. He stood at the midpoint of a mountain, the peak of which Qin Lai's group currently was. The Scarlet Barbarians thought that Qin Lai's group would eventually regret their decision and attempt to retreat, so they split up to surround them. You were right, Qin Lai. There's only a bit more than 60 of them, most in the middle stages of the Nether Passage realm, Du Xiangyang exclaimed, peering down the side of the mountain and taking note. Wait for them to get closer. These icy boulders will do more damage if they're close. Off to the side of Qin Lai's group, dozens of icy boulders were arranged in rows, poised to be rolled down and strike the barbarians below. They had just carved these extremely large, icy boulders from the mountain. If they rolled down from the peak and struck the Scarlet Barbarians, the barbarians would definitely suffer severe injuries. They probably rushed here from other areas, so they should be low on spirit energy. Song Tingyu smiled coldly. In addition to that, we have the high ground. We can take advantage of that and wait because their arrows won't be effective. All right then, Qin Lai shouted. We wait. The wait ended up lasting 15 minutes. Attack! Icy boulders the size of millstones rained down from the peak of the mountain like meteors through the sky. A dull rumble accompanied them as they traversed the glacial mountainside. These boulders also contained the spirit energy of everyone in Qin Lai's group. Some sparked with lightning, others radiated an intimidating sword aura, and others glowed with green essence. A shower of icy meteors hurtled downward, their world-shaking presence making the Scarlet Barbarians in their path go pale. Take cover, Di Fei yelled. Standing among them, Jiang Tianqing wore a shocked expression as he rushed to find somewhere to hide. Boom boom. Bam. Aya. The dull thud of stone against flesh, the crack of breaking bones, and pitiful wails echoed across the mountain. An ice boulder struck a Scarlet Barbarian in a flash of lightning. Before he could make a sound, his head promptly exploded, and the remainder of his body fell to the bottom of the mountain. Sharp swords seemed to pierce through the shields of light of other Scarlet Barbarian right before icy boulders struck them. Their exposed bodies exploded upon collision. This shower of icy meteors resulted in 8 Scarlet Barbarians dead, and at least 10 seriously injured. They can't even take a hit. At the peak of the mountain, Luo Chan shook his head and smirked. 8 dead and even more injured. Glee filled Song Tingyu's eyes. Even if there are more them, they've used a lot of spirit energy. What is there to be afraid of? Let them come. Xie Jingxian smiled coldly. Jiang Tianqing, come on up here, Du Xiangyang shouted, laughing. Come on. Didn't you want to kill us all? I'm waiting for you right up here. From their position halfway of the mountain, the Scarlet Barbarians howled, eyes red with anger. Every single one resembled frenzied beasts glaring at Qin Lai's group up on the mountain peak. These Eastern barbarians aren't much. Luo Chan stood at the peak of the mountain. He radiated sword intent that felt like it could cut through anything. A harsh, seemingly tangible light shone from his eyes. Why don't you come up here, Jiang Tianqing? Du Xiangyang hollered in a mocking tone. Weren't you going to kill us all? The rest of the group was relaxed, smiles adorning their faces. They were thinking the same thing. The Eastern barbarians weren't much. Young master. Halfway up the mountain, all of the Scarlet Barbarian clansmen turned their red eyes to look at Di Fei. 8 tribesmen had been killed by the shower of boulders and 10 had been heavily injured. More importantly, the enemy was taunting them. They couldn't endure such humiliation. Xue Moyan frowned slightly. Di Fei isn't a pushover, everyone. Control yourselves. What's he gonna do? Topple the mountain? Du Xiangyang asked with a hearty laugh. Qin Lai's group currently stood at the peak of the mountain. If the Scarlet Barbarians tried to charge up to them, they would have to endure assaults from above. After dealing significant damage to the Eastern Barbarians, Du Xiangyang and Luochun were brimming with confidence. They thought they held the upper hand and looked down on the Eastern Barbarians below them. They relaxed. Everyone, Di Fei suddenly bellowed, a vicious expression on his face. Come down from the mountain. The moment Di Fei gave the order, the Scarlet Barbarians quickly retreated from the mountain. They're retreating, Pan Xianxian exclaimed in shock. Di Fei hasn't moved, Xue Moyan shouted, her expression grave. Something's not right, Qin Lai said. When the Scarlet Barbarians retreated from the mountain and left Di Fei at the midpoint, Qin Lai started to feel earth energy radiate from him. The energy was so powerful that it made even him feel nervous. Halos of bright golden light emerged from Di Fei's body. These halos, which seemed to carry an earth-shaking power that disrupted the gravity around it, suddenly charged deep into the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The mountain and the glacier that covered it began to shake furiously. Di Fei continued to release halos carrying the power of Earth, warping the gravity in the area and making rocks tumble down the ice. From their high vantage point, the faces of everyone in Qin Lai's group went pale at the sight of other mountains moving back and forth. Did Di Fei really possess the power to topple a mountain? You really guessed it, you blabbermouth. Pan Xianxian glared at Du Xiangyang, her face riddled with shock and anxiety. Is Di Fei really this strong? Can his control over the power of Earth truly cause earthquakes and make mountains collapse? This is too terrifying. Xue Moyan sighed softly. The Eastern barbarians called Di Fei the son of the Earth. He could apparently feel Earth power not long after he was born, and is supposedly capable of connecting to it with his heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. The Earth continued to shake. At the peak of the mountain where Qin Lai's group stood atop the ice of the 1,000-meter-long glacier, enormous pieces of it broke away and fell with huge amounts of snow. The intense earthquake shook the icy mountain on which they stood, and it seemed like it would collapse at any moment. This development brought shock to the faces of Qin Lai and the others. Only now did they realize just how scary Di Fei was. No, that isn't right, Qin Lai yelled, examining the situation with his mind consciousness. The second he did, his expression went slack. He didn't cause the earthquake with his own power. The spirit of the forbidden land of Earth did. The Earth spirit formed a bond with Di Fei. It should be in his body at this very moment. As soon as he said that, everyone felt even more anxious, their opinion of Di Fei skyrocketing. It's just like how the wood spirit wanted to use Yahao to free itself from the forbidden land of wood, break out of the graveyard of gods, and escape into the outside world, Qin Lai said, a serious expression on his face. The spirit of the forbidden land of Earth has bound itself to Di Fei to do that very same thing. The Earth spirit is inside of him. It's causing the earthquake. You're right. Di Fei turned to glare at the people on the mountain threatening to collapse. The Earth spirit is helping me. Two slits suddenly appeared above his eyes, and two gray-yellow eyes shot open. It seemed as if these new eyes had replaced Di Fei's eyebrows, making it look like he had four. It gave him a strange, frightening appearance. Everyone instinctively looked at the pair of gray-yellow eyes. Whoosh! Dozens of gray and yellow rays of light shot from both eyes and smashed into the mountain peak. Boom, boom, boom! Enormous boulders cracked, and the glacier fell apart at its center. The ice at the peak of the mountain could no longer hold up and began to collapse as well. After the explosions caused by the rays of light, the bulk of the mountain slowly started tilting. Pan Xianxian screamed, her shrill voice echoing from the top of the mountain. Jump! Qin Lai shouted. Just as the glacier collapsed and right before the mountain peak hurtled to the ground, Qin Lai, Song Tingyu, Xie Jingxian, Du Xiangyang, Luochun, Xue Moyan, and Pan Xianxian jumped. Their figures, each of them surrounded by shields of light, fell toward a nearby valley. They crashed into the snow that had accumulated there, creating deep, person-shaped holes. Pan Xianxian's shield shattered upon impact, leaving her dazed and completely exposed to the cold winds. She spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face turned pale. "It's so cold," she stuttered, trembling as her eyes grew dim. Bang! Luo Chun smashed into a piece of ice that had fallen earlier on, shattering it. He groaned as blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. Everyone else suffered in similar ways, ending up dazed upon landing. Qin Lai endured a similar crash landing. He fell like a human hammer, slamming straight into an enormous, 3-meter-tall piece of ice. It crumbled to pieces as he leaped to his feet with a grunt. Having a strong body finally showed its benefits. Since Qin Lai was as tough as stone even without the protection of a shield of light, falling from such a height had no effect on him. When the others landed, their shields of light either shattered or badly warped. Every person's shield of light required pure spirit energy to take shape. The destruction of such a shield meant a large expenditure of spirit energy. When this happened to the rest of Qin Lai's group, 1/10 of each person's spirit energy was lost. This didn't even take their wounds into account. "Incoming!" Qin Lai shouted. He took a deep breath, clenching and unclenching his hands. Blue bolts of lightning shot from his fingers like spirit snakes, each 1 to 2 meters long and filled with the pure, ferocious energy of thunder and lightning. "There!" Jiang Tianxing pointed them out to other scarlet barbarians. Just outside the valley, 10 scarlet barbarians knocked their bows, preparing to shoot at Qin Lai's group. An intense cold filled their eyes. Lines of blue, dark green, scarlet, and translucent spirit energy coursed along the length of their arms, flooding into their enormous bows. The arrows knocked into their bows ignited like torches and released bright, colorful lights. Fire! Arrows filled with pure spirit energy shot through the air like rain. The terrifying power they carried was capable of destroying the valley like the careless movement of a gargantuan being. Explode! 10 streaks of blue lightning twisted through the air like vicious snakes, shooting toward the arrows. Papa papa! The snakes clashed with the arrows in midair, filling the sky with bright flames and sparks of light. It resembled a beautiful fireworks show. The moment the arrows collided with the blue lightning, the spirit energy they contained released a shockwave that struck Qin Lai. The force flung Qin Lai to the mouth of the valley. He trembled uncontrollably, feeling as if he had taken a heavy punch. He eventually got his body under control and stopped trembling. The lightning in his eyes looked slightly weaker, but he still wore his usual relaxed expression. Despite the fact that he blocked a majority of the arrows, 3 got past him. However, these 3 suddenly exploded when they approached Xue Moyan. Xue Moyan's illusory demon orb was capable of releasing wondrous illusions. It emitted an ethereal light that gradually enveloped her figure, making her seem like an immortal goddess descending to the mortal realm. She had been the one to block the last 3 arrows. Jiang Tianxing, haven't you and your father spent many years trying to find an opportunity to kill me? She asked, walking forward. Her bright eyes swept across Qin Lai and settled Jiang Tianxing, who stood in the midst of the scarlet barbarians. After today, we'll have one less target. Jiang Tianxing's eyes went a bloody crimson, like those of a savage ghost. In a low voice, he said, "Senior Sister Xue, you should not have lived. If it weren't for you, your mother wouldn't have been stuck with a fate worse than death." Upon hearing his words, Xue Moyan's eyes slowly became tinged with blood. The thick odor of blood gradually emanated from her body as she channeled the blood spirit art. Dense, bloody light gushed from the palm of Xue Moyan's left hand with an angry, earth-shaking roar. A bone dragon dripping with blood winked into existence, its entire body sparkling with translucent, bloody light. Every single one of its bones exuded waves of blood energy. Qin Lai's eyes suddenly lit up in realization. Although this dragon reminded him of Blood Dragon's roar, a spirit art executed with the power of blood, it was actually a genuine dragon skeleton, with its sanguine skeleton as the frame and Xue Moyan's blood spirit energy as its flesh. The bloody bone dragon looked as large as the entrance to a mine around 20 meters wide. Its eyes shone with intimidating bloody light. The bloody bone dragon roared. the sanguine flames covering its body erupting skyward. It seemed as if the dragon's burning, earth-shaking might had surged into existence amidst a sea of blood. Qianlai raised his head to watch as the bloody bone dragon soared above him, charging straight for the group of scarlet barbarians wielding giant bows. An angry roar tore through the air as the dragon's bloody tail swept across 3 of the barbarians, flinging them to the other end of the snowy valley with a bone-shattering crunch. As if they had been pierced with sharp weapons, broken bones protruded from the stomachs of 2 of the barbarians. The third one hadn't even hit the ground before unleashing a blood-curdling scream. He immediately died a terrible death as all of the blood in his blood vessels exploded. "You have the bloodthirsty dragon?" Jiang Tianxing screamed. The bloody bone dragon turned its bloody gaze to Jiang Tianxing, locking onto him with a roar. Its sanguine bones twisted and convulsed before it rushed toward him, a sinister expression on its bloody face. An expression of horror came over Jiang Tianxing, and he instinctively turned to flee. He was well aware of the terror that was the bloodthirsty dragon, Blood Fiend Sect's greatest spirit artifact. Back when Blood Fiend Sect fell to ruin, Lingye and the bloodthirsty dragon had mysteriously disappeared. Jiang Tianxing and his father, Jiang Zhuzhe, had expended enormous amounts of effort searching for it. According to the rumors, the blood progenitor once killed a huge dragon. Using his own blood and several hundred rare spirit materials to temper the dragon's corpse, he created the bloodthirsty dragon. It then went on to become Blood Fiend Sect's most famous spirit artifact. As a heaven-grade spirit artifact, the bloodthirsty dragon had always been the ultimate treasure that represented and protected Blood Fiend Sect. Only disciples of the sect who cultivated the blood spirit art could control this powerful spirit artifact. The bloodthirsty dragon had originally been in Xue Li's possession. However, after Jiang Zhuzhe set him up and imprisoned him within the 12 spirit pattern pillars, it mysteriously disappeared. This was the reason why Jiang Zhuzhe hadn't killed Xue Li, instead deciding to torture, interrogate, and search him again and again. He sought to obtain the bloodthirsty dragon, a heaven-grade spirit artifact. Yet, after so many years, Jiang Zhuzhe hadn't been able to discover its whereabouts. He eventually gave up on it. No one could have foreseen the event that, after coming to an agreement with Xue Li, Blood Fiend Sect's former sect master, Mo Yunwu, would personally pass the bloodthirsty dragon down to his daughter instead of the current sect master. After Blood Fiend Sect fell, Lingye took the bloodthirsty dragon and fled far from the heavenly calamity continent. Then she passed it down to Xue Moyan. No one realized that Xue Moyan, who had always fought others using illusory demon sect's spirit arts and spirit artifacts, possessed the bloodthirsty dragon. She never dared to use it because doing so would expose it, and by extension, her own identity. However, Jiang Tianxing's taunts had truly infuriated her. Unable to suppress her anger, she actually summoned the bloodthirsty dragon. The bloodthirsty dragon, which was made using a dragon's corpse, nurtured with the blood of the blood progenitor, and tempered with several hundred rare spirit materials, now displayed its terrifying might. Upon focusing on and examining the bloodthirsty dragon, Qianlai noticed that Blood Fiend Sect's spirit art, Blood Dragon's Roar, had been created using the heaven-grade spirit artifact as a basis. At Xue Moyan's command, this unusually large, dragon-shaped spirit artifact roared and rushed at Jiang Tianxing. All of the scarlet barbarians below the bloody bone dragon were in the late stage of the Nether Passage realm. They had formidable realms and abundant energy. However, when the bloodthirsty dragon flew overhead, the extraordinary patterns on its bones blossomed with terrifying blood energy. Bang, bang, bang! And the scarlet barbarians beneath it suddenly exploded, their blood having boiled up and expanded beyond what their bodies could contain. The scarlet barbarian martial practitioners outside the valley burst into showers of blood one after another. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Bloody lights shot from the remains of everyone who died such horrible deaths, flying into the sky and streaming into the bloodthirsty dragon. The dragon roared angrily as it absorbed all of the light into its body of blood and bone. The bloody light in its pupils grew increasingly terrifying. Di Fei, help me! Jiang Tianxing screamed over and over. He fled into the distance like a ray of sanguine light, using everything he had in an attempt to reach Di Fei. He hoped that the Scarlet Barbarian leader would be able to assist him. Having rushed from the toppled mountain, Di Fei was in the process of leading his men toward the entrance to the valley when the hysteric Jiang Tianxing came into view. Relentlessly chasing him from behind was the bloody bone dragon. It burned with sanguine flames and radiated a fiendish aura of blood that reached the sky. This sight left Di Fei, who moved with anger and extraordinary might, speechless. He hadn't even made it to the valley yet. "Stop!" Di Fei commanded his tribesmen, hastily raising a hand. His expression changed from anger to disbelief as he yelled, "Jiang Tianxing, what is that thing behind you?" "It's Blood Fiend Sect's ultimate treasure, the bloodthirsty dragon." Jiang Tianxing screamed in horror. "Di Fei, command the Earth Spirit to create a wall of earth and block it. Shui Moyan is controlling the bloodthirsty dragon, but her life force is weak. She definitely won't be able to keep it up for long." "All right," Di Fei shouted. He furrowed his brow in concentration as a new pair of eyes appeared on his face once more. "Seismic mountain uprising," he yelled, injecting an immense amount of earth power into the ground. The earth behind Jiang Tianxing released a terrifying rumble as the ground split, barriers of ice and stone jutting into the air. Boom! The bloodthirsty dragon rammed into one of the walls, shattering the barrier that resembled a small hill. It continued to charge forward, scattering shards and boulders of ice and stone everywhere. Thick barriers burst into pieces one after another. The bloodthirsty dragon roared angrily as it continued its violent pursuit of Jiang Tianxing. Again! Again! Jiang Tianxing yelled in fear. Seeing that the situation was just as bad as before, Di Fei had no choice but to concentrate and join forces with the Earth Spirit once more, building new earthen barriers to block the dragon's path. Back in the valley, Shui Moyan's beautiful, blood-soaked figure flew past Qin Lai into the distance. She followed the bloodthirsty dragon closely, directing it to attack Jiang Tianxing. Her entire body brimmed with killing intent. "Sister Shui," Pan Xianxian said in a soft voice. "She looks so fearless." The sight stunned everyone in Qin Lai's group. "She's killed more than a dozen Scarlet Barbarians using just the power of blood and that spirit artifact, the bloodthirsty dragon. She has yet to call upon even an ounce of the illusory power of illusory demon sect," Du Xiangyang said, his lips forming a bitter smile as he shook his head. "All of her enemies are in the late stage of the Nether Passage realm too. 1,000 years ago, if internal strife hadn't erupted within Blood Fiend Sect, if the 3 great families hadn't betrayed them, if the 9 great silver rank forces hadn't come together and attacked them." A sense of respect welled up inside of Luo Chun. If none of these things had come to pass, Blood Fiend Sect probably would have continued to be the most terrifying force in the Land of Chaos. As a newly ascended silver rank force, Heavenly Sword Mountain was young like Luo Chun. They didn't have much admiration for Blood Fiend Sect, a force that once dominated the Land of Chaos. Although it was once powerful, Blood Fiend Sect hadn't left much of an impression on Luo Chun because it ultimately fell to ruin. He had always thought that stories of Blood Fiend sects were just rumors. He believed that, if such a sect truly was strong, it wouldn't have been eliminated. Yet at this moment, after Shui Moyan summoned the bloodthirsty dragon and instantly killed a dozen or so Scarlet Barbarians in the same realm as her, he finally understood just how terrifying Blood Fiend Sect had been. He truly acknowledged the powerful force that once dominated the Land of Chaos. "She won't be able to sustain it," Xie Jingxian suddenly said. "This terrifying heaven-grade spirit artifact needs incredible amounts of blood and energy to sustain it. Shui Moyan may possess a considerable amount of both, but she doesn't have enough. She definitely won't hold on much longer." Xie Jingxian could keenly sense life force. She noticed Shui Moyan's plight a long time ago and knew there was no way she'd be able to control the bloodthirsty dragon much longer. A heaven-grade spirit artifact like the bloodthirsty dragon was suitable for Nirvana realm and imperishable realm martial practitioners. Only elites in these realms could skillfully wield such a spirit artifact. Xue Moyan was only at the peak of the Nether Passage realm. The fact that she could summon the bloodthirsty dragon and unleash a small fraction of its might was already a feat to be proud of. She clearly couldn't keep this up for long. This spirit artifact's terrifying power is the only reason she could instantly kill around a dozen barbarians in the same realm as her, Xianxia said, calmly revealing the truth. She wouldn't have such an overwhelming advantage on her own. Does that mean she'll have to withdraw the bloodthirsty dragon if Di Fei is able to fend it off for a little while longer? Qin Lai asked with a frown. Not only would she have to withdraw it, she'd even grow weak from using up too much of her blood and energy, Xianxia explained. We shouldn't just watch from the sidelines. We need to stay by her side and wait for the moment that she exhausts all of her strength. We need to protect her when that happens. We'll need to keep the Scarlet Barbarians from injuring or killing her. A grim expression covered Qin Lai's face. Without another word, he rushed from the valley in Xue Moyan's direction. Bang! Another wall of icy stone rose from the ground, and the bloodthirsty dragon burst straight through it. It roared madly and was about to reach Di Fei and Jiang Tianxing. Pwack! A mouthful of blood erupted from Di Fei's mouth. His eyes grew dim as he ignored Jiang Tianxing's cries and yelled, "Retreat! Retreat from this place! Now!" Di Fei was actually the first to give in. "The bloody bone dragon has been withdrawn!" A scarlet barbarian cried out in surprise. Xue Moyan's face was pale, the glittering bloody light in her eyes gradually dimming as well. Di Fei, who had been ready to turn tail and run, regained his composure upon hearing the cry of his tribesmen, a pleased expression returning to his face. Someone who's about to die doesn't deserve Blood Fiend Sec's ultimate treasure, Jiang Tianxing yelled, insane with excitement. He shot toward Xue Moyan, almost dancing with joy. He was about to seize the bloodthirsty dragon from Xue Moyan and fulfill one of his father's dreams. The moment he saw the bloodthirsty dragon fly back to Xue Moyan, Jiang Tianxing immediately charged at her. His eyes were bloodshot and his body shimmered with bloody light. It seemed as if he had been injected with chicken blood. "You are not worthy of wielding the bloodthirsty dragon," he cried. An illusory dragon made of bloody light flew out of Jiang Tianxing's forehead. This dragon contained Jiang Tianxing's soul consciousness and wrapped around the bloodthirsty dragon in an attempt to rob Blood Fiend Sect of its ultimate treasure, turning it into a powerful tool for him and his father. A heaven-grade spirit artifact was one of the most valuable objects in the Land of Chaos. Every single one of them held infinite might and could unleash earth-shattering power. Not all of the 9 Great Silver Rank Force's elite martial practitioners wielded a heaven-grade spirit artifact of their own. For a Blood Fiend Sect disciple who cultivated the blood spirit art and possessed a tremendous amount of blood energy within their blood, the bloodthirsty dragon was literally the ultimate treasure. When activating it with the blood spirit art, this spirit artifact was truly capable of turning the sky upside down. Jiang Tianxing stared at the bloodthirsty dragon with bloodshot eyes, his face filled with extreme desire. "Back off!" A thunderous rumbling rang out, and 10 bolts of dark blue lightning struck toward Jiang Tianxing like 10 brilliant chains. Upon being struck by the lightning bolts, the illusory dragon that emerged from Jiang Tianxing's forehead instantly became listless, its bloody luster growing dim. Jiang Tianxing came to an abrupt halt, his expression twisting in anger. "Qin Lai!" he roared. "Scram!" Qin Lai yelled, his hand forming a grasping motion and thrusting in Jiang Tianxing's direction. A ball of thick, bloody light instantly gushed from his palm. Blood Dragon's roar. Another bloody dragon rammed into Jiang Tianxing's chest. The terrifying, fiendish energy struck Jiang Tianxing like a tidal wave, the power of thunder and lightning coursing through it as well. This single strike sent Jiang Tianxing flying. Boom! Jiang Tianxing hurtled to the ground, falling amidst the scarlet barbarians. His face flushed red as a series of cracks echoed from his chest. Blood Dragon's roar. "You cultivate the blood spirit art too?" he screamed, his eyes shining with a shockingly harsh light. He was clearly bewildered by the constantly turning events. "Just who are you? Who ordered you to snatch the demon sealing tombstone from my grasp?" Only a blood fiend sect disciple could cultivate the blood spirit art and learn how to execute Blood Dragon's roar. From Jiang Tianxing's perspective, Qin Lai unleashing Blood Dragon's roar clearly meant that he was a disciple of a certain blood fiend sect elder's descendant. He took that thought a step further and assumed that Qin Lai had planned to steal the demon-sealing tombstone from him all along. He surmised that him and his father working with the Scarlet Barbarians had long since been discovered by the enemy. "My father taught Qin Lai the blood spirit art," Xue Moyan exclaimed softly. It was at this moment that the rampaging bloodthirsty dragon turned back into a ray of bloody light and miraculously withdrew into Xue Moyan's snow-white arm. A small tattoo of a bloody dragon materialized on her arm for a moment, then faded until it disappeared. Qin Lai had ruined Jiang Tianxing's plan to seize the bloodthirsty dragon from Xue Moyan. Unless Jiang Tianxing killed Xue Moyan and tore off her arm, there was an extremely small possibility that the bloodthirsty dragon would be summoned once more. "That's impossible," Jiang Tianxing cried out. "My father trapped him at the heavenly Fisher continent and refined him alive, completely destroying his soul." Xue Moyan's eyes became a deep red once again. However, it didn't go red because she circulated the blood spirit art, but because Jiang Tianxing brought up Xue Li's terrible experience. Only half of Senior Xue Li's soul was refined at that time. The other half of his soul still lives on. Not only is he alive and well even now, he has even reunited with his wife. Qin Lai said in a calm, serious tone, "When I leave the graveyard of gods, he'll be able to reform his body and recover from the severe damage to his soul. It won't take long for him to regain his strength, lead Blood Fiend sect, and re-establish it in the land of chaos." "What nonsense!" Jiang Tianxing laughed, his frustration reaching its peak. "Xue Li, Xue Moyan, and Emolingyue, who is on her deathbed, will only meet one another on the way to the Yellow Springs. Ha ha ha! Kill them," Di Fei ordered. "Kill them all." At this moment, about 30 Scarlet Barbarians were gathered around Di Fei. At his command, they fired the arrows that they had knocked. These arrows shot toward Qin Lai and the others at the entrance to the valley, resembling a meteor shower as different colors of light trailed behind each one. Every arrow carried a terrifying amount of energy within. "Kill them!" Qin Lai and the others reacted to Di Fei's commands and took out their respective spirit artifacts, immediately charging out of the valley and toward the Scarlet Barbarians while enduring the rain of arrows. A sharp, crescent-bladed scythe flew out of Xie Jingshuan's hands. Numerous infernal purple flowers made of flames blossomed on the scythe and floated toward the Scarlet Barbarians like harmless bubbles. Motes of green starlight rich with refreshing, natural life energy radiated from the flower-shaped flames. Bang! The purple flowers erupted, and the green starlight dots that accompanied them suddenly transformed into tendrils of tenacious vines that swiftly stretched toward 2 Scarlet Barbarians at the front of Di Fei's group. Tiny thorns adorned the entire length of every vine. Each of them possessed shocking strength and agility. Like strange snakes, they instantly wrapped around a barbarian's neck. Crack! The vines constricted, breaking that barbarian's neck. His eyes bulged, and he died without even being able to scream. Luo Chun snorted coldly as he unleashed a harsh sword beam into the sky. It shot through the rain of arrows falling toward him, cutting all of them to pieces. He fired multiple beams of crescent-shaped rainbow sword light at the Scarlet Barbarians, causing all sorts of strange, pain-filled cries to ring through the air. Du Xiangyang chuckled as 2 scarlet flames burned in each of his hands. He ran straight for the Scarlet Barbarians, glowing as brightly as a blazing sun. Everyone in Qin Lai's group attacked in unison. Most of the Scarlet Barbarians present were at the middle stage of the Nether Passage realm. Some of them were in the late stage of the Nether Passage realm. Overall, they numbered around 30 or so people. However, their fatigue immediately began to show as Qin Lai and the others surprised them by charging into their midst and starting a slaughter. Break! Like a ray of bloody light weaving through the Scarlet Barbarians, Qin Lai endured the cold winds of the forbidden land of ice, while constantly condensing thunder and lightning energy. The astral thunder hammer in his hands enhanced his violent thunder and lightning energy, turning it into dazzling dots of blue light that flew straight into Scarlet Barbarians. Although all of them maintained shields of light of varying colors, the Scarlet Barbarians immediately discovered that the astral lights would blast straight through their shields, shattering them like eggshells. The second their shields of light exploded and their bodies were exposed to the harsh, cold winds, the barbarians immediately began to shiver uncontrollably. As soon as the Scarlet Barbarians lost the protection of their shields of light, the attacks of Luo Chen, Du Xiangyang, and Xie Jingxian shot from behind Qin Lai and assaulted them. Many of them immediately suffered severe injuries or died on the spot. Screams constantly echoed from among them. "Young master! Save us, young master! We can't handle them!" The Scarlet Barbarians subconsciously retreated as they screamed. The second that Qin Lai's group charged them, their formation began to crumble. Di Fei, the renowned Son of Earth, had joined forces with the Earth Spirit earlier and created walls of icy stone to block the bloodthirsty dragon. This resulted in him expending too much spirit energy and suffering a blow to his psyche. His strength had fallen significantly, and he couldn't do anything about his tribesmen being at a disadvantage. The bloodthirsty dragon was a heaven-grade spirit artifact and Blood Fiend Sect's ultimate treasure. Xue Moyan had spent tremendous amounts of spirit energy and blood energy to control it, using its terrifying might to kill over a dozen Scarlet Barbarian elites in an instant. If Di Fei hadn't borrowed the Earth Spirit's strength, there wouldn't have been any way for him to oppose the bloodthirsty dragon. Now, just like Xue Moyan, he had exhausted too much strength during the first intense clash. He couldn't gather any strength to launch a new wave of attacks. Seeing that his tribesmen were at a disadvantage and that Jiang Tianqing couldn't do anything with Qin Lai keeping him busy, Di Fei finally grew nervous. "Contact Sen Yi and Jia Yu," Di Fei suddenly yelled. Understanding showed on the face of a Scarlet Barbarian who had retreated to the rear of the group, temporarily taking refuge from the danger. He pulled out a horn and used his soul consciousness to send a message, accurately transmitting their location. The white barbarians and black barbarians who were searching for the ice spirit nearby would immediately rush over once they received this message. The Eastern barbarians were united when facing a common enemy. They prioritized the slaughter of all land of chaos martial practitioners above everything else. San Yi replied. He said that he's only 10 kilometers away from here. He should arrive immediately. Jia Yu also replied. She said that she'll be here soon. The barbarian holding the horn had a sinister look in his eyes as he laughed harshly. This news lifted the spirit of every Scarlet Barbarian within earshot. Their morale visibly went up a notch. "Hold on just a bit longer," Di Fei exclaimed. "Once San Yi arrives, none of our enemies will be left alive." Word spread among the Scarlet Barbarians that San Yi and Jia Yu were coming, and every barbarian that was about to retreat immediately regained their wits. They readjusted their formation and began carrying out plans to deal with and delay Qin Lai's group. The Scarlet Barbarians that were just about to fall apart regained their fighting spirit after San Yi and Jia Yu sent word that they would reinforce them soon. Di Fei snorted indifferently and sat down behind his tribesmen. The Earth Spirit's eyes opened above his own and shone with a grim, ruthless light. 3 Scarlet Barbarians instantly moved behind Di Fei. After taking a moment to look each other in the eyes, they each brandished a dagger, gritted their teeth, and slashed at their fingers. Fresh red blood welled from the cuts at their fingertips. Eyes filled with intense ferocity, the 3 barbarians smeared blood against the tattoos on their necks, shoulders, and chests. This made their tattoos seem thicker, causing them to glow with bloody traces of evil and terror. Each of the barbarians had their own tattoo. All 3 grew brighter and more distinct on their bodies. One was a dancing butterfly, one was a porcupine-like spirit beast, and the last one looked like blossoming spirit grass. "Sacrifice!" the 3 Scarlet Barbarians exclaimed in unison. The moment they did, their blood, spirit energy, soul energy, and mind consciousnesses combined into a formless current of energy that flooded their tattoos. A bizarre light erupted from the trio's eyes as they suddenly looked at Luo Chan with strange, grim smiles. Luo Chan stood in the middle of the Scarlet Barbarians, sword at the ready. He radiated a sword aura that seemed capable of rending the sky. Wherever he pointed his sword, mighty beams of sword light would stream out like rushing rivers. None of the barbarians nearby could match him. All of them fell back, not daring to get close to him. However, the moment the three distinctly tattooed barbarians looked at Luo Chun, pain appeared on his proud, indifferent face. In the very next moment, Luo Chun grunted as if he had suffered a heavy blow. The sword in his hand went dim as well. Ugh! Luo Chun exclaimed painfully. He fell to his knees, seemingly battered, and instantly lost his ability to fight. Well done! Di Fei shouted, praising the three men behind him. His praise encouraged them, and they turned their sharp eyes to Du Xiangyang. As soon as they locked onto him, the scarlet flames around his body died out all at once. In the next instant, traces of blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He had clearly suffered some sort of backlash. Du Xiangyang had no idea who had secretly struck him. He shuddered and surveyed the scarlet barbarians around him, eyes full of murderous intent. Next, Di Fei said as he found another target. Him! That Qin Lai! The three tattooed barbarians laughed sinisterly, then sucked in a deep breath. Gathering their strength once more, they directed their eerie gazes toward Qin Lai. Qin Lai was currently rampaging throughout the scarlet barbarians, laughing continuously. With every swing of his arms, he threw out rays of bloody light and thunderous bolts of lightning. Jiang Tianqing! Qin Lai shouted in a mocking tone, passing through the throng of fighting and heading straight for Jiang Tianqing. Do you dare fight me? Back in the sea around Spirit Eagle Island, Qin Lai hadn't been able to gain the upper hand against Jiang Tianqing, and had even been at a disadvantage when Jiang Tianqing executed his blood spirit art. More than half a year later, Qin Lai encountered Jiang Tianqing again in the Graveyard of Gods. Qin Lai's realm had risen to the middle stage of the Nether Passage realm, and the strength of his body had increased to a new level. He no longer shied away from fighting Jiang Tianqing. On the other hand, Jiang Tianqing actually didn't dare to fight Qin Lai. He could only constantly retreat in face of Qin Lai's aggressiveness. However, at this very moment, a butterfly, a porcupine, and blossoming spirit grass suddenly appeared within Qin Lai's mind. As soon as these foreign elements appeared in his mind, Qin Lai's true soul shook as he turned all of his attention to them. The blossoming spirit grass abruptly released a bewitching scent that intoxicated Qin Lai's true soul. The porcupine-like spirit beast let out a series of cries as the strange quills on its body pierced Qin Lai's soul lake like rays of golden light. In the outside world, Qin Lai felt terrible pain in his true soul and suddenly lost control of the spirit art he was about to unleash. Back in his mind, the butterfly flapped its wings and caused enormous waves to develop in Qin Lai's soul lake, forcing his mind to lose focus. The combined attack of these ethereal creatures had a huge effect on Qin Lai, just like it did on Luo Chun and Du Xiangyang. He instantly sat down on the ground, an expression of both shock and pain on his face. The faces of the three barbarians next to Di Fei grew even more sinister. Great job! You've done very well, Di Fei said with a nod, relaxing. Then he pointed at Song Tingyu. Attack her next. When San Yi and Jia Yu arrive, none of these Land of Chaos martial practitioners will leave this place alive. Understood, the trio said. The faces of the three were pale, but their minds were in great condition. They moved to attack Song Tingyu. However, just as they were about to do so, Qin Lai's blood-soaked eyes pierced through the fighting around him and locked onto them. The three scarlet barbarians that had been secretly attacking Qin Lai's group suddenly stopped. Their faces twisted in shock, intense fear clouding their eyes. Since Di Fei was closest to them, he felt the sudden change in their demeanor. Turning to look at them, he saw that their eyes were full of thunder and lightning. It was as if their eyes had been struck by lightning. Ah! The trio screamed in pain. They rubbed their eyes with all their might, seemingly trying to force the lightning from their eyes. At his position in the distance, Qin Lai stood up. He wore an indifferent expression as his eyes shone with bloody light, sparks of lightning shooting around his body. Prack, prack, prack. Bolts of lightning struck the butterfly, porcupine, and spirit grass in his mind, destroying them. At the same time, Qin Lai's mind consciousness flowed through the soul connection between the three creatures and their owners, carrying the power of thunder and lightning directly into heads and eyes of the three barbarians. Qin Lai watched the trio, softly exclaiming, "Explode!" A dull noise resounded in the heads of the three scarlet barbarians as their eyes actually exploded. "My eyes! My eyes! I'm blind! I can't see! Oh! My eyes!" The trio clawed at their eye sockets, blood flowing through the gaps between their fingers as they screeched in pain. This turn of events prompted Di Fei to get to his feet. He considered the situation for a few seconds, then yelled, "Retreat!" He ended up changing his mind once more. Upon hearing Di Fei's command once again, all of the Scarlet Barbarians only hesitated for a moment before turning around and retreating. "Follow me," Di Fei instructed the now-blind barbarian trio before leading the way out of the valley. He didn't turn around even once. The barbarians that had been fighting Qin Lai's group immediately turned around and fled. "Don't chase them," Qin Lai frowned. Song Tingyu and Xie Jingxian stopped immediately. Luo Chun and Du Xiangyang reluctantly stopped as well, indifferent expressions on their faces. "They're probably retreating in the direction that San Yi and Jia Yu will be coming from," Qin Lai said. "We'll run into the main force of Eastern barbarians if we give chase. That wouldn't be very wise. We should leave this place while the opponent has yet to regroup," Song Tingyu suggested. "We don't have any tokens they can track, and finding us again won't be a simple matter if we find a new mountain to hide in." Everyone agreed with Song Tingyu's suggestion, and no one had any other ideas. As a result, they left without even looting the corpses of the Scarlet Barbarians. Leading the 20 or so Scarlet Barbarians that remained, Di Fei finally met up with San Ye's Black Barbarians and Jia Yu's White Barbarians an hour later. "Where are your tribesmen, Di Fei?" San Yi yelled from afar. "Why do you only have around 20 people with you?" Jia Yu was also puzzled. "Are the rest of your tribesmen still ahead of us attacking the land of chaos martial practitioners?" They all assumed that Di Fei had left some of his tribesmen behind. Every Scarlet Barbarian, including Di Fei, wore expression of defeat. Hatred filled their eyes. One man struck an ice rock out of extreme anger, shattering it and yelling, "I swear to kill all the martial practitioners of the land of chaos." "What's going on?" Jia Yu asked, growing serious. Gao Yu silently stood beside her, maintaining a grim, aloof expression. "Zhang Tianxing," Sen Yi yelled. "Tell us what happened. We're the only ones left." Zhang Tianxing glanced at Di Fei's grim face, then sighed. "We split up into smaller teams to search for the ice spirit. Qin Lai's group took us out one team after another, resulting in severe losses." He slowly revealed the truth. San Yi and Jia Yu's faces became uglier as they quietly listened to his account of events. "Are they really that powerful?" A brawny white barbarian beside Jia Yu found it hard to believe Zhang Tianxing. "We fought Black Voodoo Cult, 10,000 Beast Mountain, and Celestial Artifact Sect. None of them seemed all that strong. Why did you suffer so many losses?" "That Qin Lai fellow is extremely scary," a Scarlet Barbarian screamed. "He broke our tribe's soul curse." It was only then that everyone noticed that there were 3 Scarlet Barbarians beside Di Fei. They had been clutching their eyes and crying softly all this time. Qin Lai cultivates the power of thunder. He was extremely formidable in the forbidden land of thunder, San Yi said, taking a deep breath. "However, this is the forbidden land of ice. How could he overturn the heavens in here?" "Gao Yu, you came from the Scarlet Tide continent with that Qin Lai. You should know about him. Is he as scary as they say?" The brawny white barbarian suddenly asked. All of the Eastern barbarians, including Sen Yi and Di Fei, turned their attention to Gao Yu. "I do not know," Gao Yu said indifferently. Dissatisfaction could clearly be seen in the eyes of the Scarlet and Black barbarians as they gazed at him. "They aren't far from here," Zhang Tianxing said hurriedly. "If we pursue them immediately, we may still be able to find them. Then we shall give chase," Sen Yi ordered. "Turn back," Difei yelled. Qin Lai's group found their way up another icy mountain that ringed the frozen lake. Halfway up that mountain, everyone dug out their own caves and sat inside of them, recovering their strength with spirit stones. You need to use the spring of life, Qin Lai said within one of the caves. The only other person in this cave was Xue Moyan. The blood had drained out of her face, leaving it deathly pale. She had used more than half the blood spirit energy in her blood. The bloodthirsty dragon was a domineering killing tool. Since Xue Moyan used it despite her low realm, it had exhausted an astonishing amount of her blood energy to match its terrifyingly deadly power. Qin Lai could sense how much blood energy she had used up. He knew that she was in extremely poor condition, which was why he purposely came over to look after her. My mother is the only one who should use the spring of life. Xue Moyan shook her head firmly. I need to save it for her. That battle exhausted your life energy. Qin Lai sighed. If you don't consume the spring of life as soon as possible, you might not be able to leave the graveyard of gods alive. He could already see a small clump of white hair on Xue Moyan's head. This was a sign that her life force was running out. At this rate, even if they didn't get caught in any other battles, time would slowly kill her. Xue Moyan quietly sat inside the cave dug into the side of the icy mountain. Her eyes, which resembled clear lakes, held traces of sadness that just couldn't be hidden. Please keep the spring of life safe for me. Xue Moyan took out the bottle that held the spring of life. Then, after a moment of thought, she raised her left hand palm up. Bloody light shone from it, and the bloodthirsty dragon floated into the air, several times smaller than its original size. Take Blood Fiend Sek's ultimate treasure as well. Keep it safe. Once you get out of here, please find my father and give both it and the spring of life to him. After the battle with Difei, Jiang Tianxing, and the other Scarlet Barbarians, she noticed that she was in horrible condition. She tried to recover her blood energy, but her mind lacked the spirit. She also noticed that her hair, which originally resembled a long cascade of smooth black hair, had become dry and lost its luster. Several spots sported a faint white color. All of these strange changes pointed to one conclusion. Her life would soon come to an end. The depletion of Xue Moyan's life energy, or, more specifically, the sacrificing of her overall lifespan, could only be fixed with the spring of life. However, her mother needed the spring of life as badly as she did, and she decided to die for her mother's sake. I will not deliver the spring of life and Blood Fiend Sek's ultimate treasure for you, Qin Lai said with a heavy expression, his brow furrowed. Either you continue to live strongly, or the spring of life and the bloodthirsty dragon die with you. Astonishment filled Xue Moyan's eyes. How is the spring of life even used? Qin Lai asked out of the blue. Drinking works well enough, Xue Moyan answered without thinking. That seems pretty simple. Qin Lai nodded slightly, then suddenly said, Let me make the decision for you then. What? Xue Moyan asked in surprise. What are you doing? It was at this moment that Qin Lai moved as quick as lightning, grabbing the bottle that held the spring of life. Dense bolts of lightning shot from his fingers as Xue Moyan screamed. The lightning bolts resembled prismatic ribbons of energy that wrapped around Xue Moyan's supple body. They emanated a paralyzing power, firmly binding her. Xue Moyan had exhausted too much of her blood energy in the previous battle. She was currently at her weakest and didn't have the strength to stop Qin Lai. She could only glare at Qin Lai in horror, hastily saying, No, it is not up to you to decide. Qin Lai reached out with his left hand, forcefully opened Xue Moyan's lips, and poured the spring of life into her mouth. No, no, Xue Moyan screamed. NN. In the cave next to them, Luo Chan was in the process of recovering his strength using spirit stones when he suddenly opened his eyes, surprise and confusion on his face. In another cave, Du Xiangyang shivered as he rubbed his chin, a playful smile on his face. You animal! Pan Qianxian exclaimed as she rushed out of her cave and into theirs. Song Tingyu and Xie Jingxian sat in the same cave recovering their spirit energy. They had also heard Xue Moyan's cries. However, The two just continued to cultivate inside the cave without even the slightest change in expressions. They knew Qin Lai well, and therefore had no intention of moving. Qin Lai, if you dare to harm Sister Shui, I'll cut off that dog head of yours, Pan Xianxia yelled as she barged in. Upon entering the cave, she saw that Qin Lai had bound Shui Moyan with lightning, forcing her lips open with one hand while pouring some kind of liquid into her mouth with the other. I'll kill you. Pan Xianxia didn't hesitate to unleash a deadly attack. Bang! A silver ring slammed into the center of Qin Lai's back. The powerful force of the blow struck Qin Lai, causing his entire body to shudder. He couldn't help but inadvertently grunt in pain. A shocking flood of spirit energy soaked into Qin Lai's flesh, damaging his innards. Qin Lai's body trembled greatly, but his hands, which were administering the spring of life to Shui Moyan, didn't move at all, continued to steadily pour into Shui Moyan's mouth. The spring of life released a refreshing aroma and radiated potent life energy. Shui Moyan's body absorbed the spring of life like dry land greedily sucking up rainwater. Her pallid gray skin slowly regained its lively color. The wisps of white in her hair quickly recovered its beauty and luster. The traces of pale white that seemed to have existed in her since she was born swiftly faded as well. Like an ancient tree once again surging with life, or a withered forest giving birth to a new sapling, a tremendous life force swelled within Shui Moyan's body. The aura of life energy that now surrounded her felt incredibly refreshing and natural, as if they had been transported to a grove of ancient trees. The entire cave resonated with life energy due to the changes to Shui Moyan's biomagnetic field. Sister Shui, having long since withdrawn her attack, Pan Xianxia stood there with her mouth agape and stared at the extraordinary changes occurring within Shui Moyan's body. It seemed as if Shui Moyan had shed her former shell and was instantly reborn in a blaze of flame. She emanated a robust life force as if she were a completely different person. Pan Xianxia naturally realized what Qin Lai had really been doing. Big brother Qin, I am sorry, she hastily apologized. I thought you were doing something bad to Sister Shui. Qin Lai wore a heavy expression, saying nothing. He kept a close eye on the bottle in his hand. When he was sure confirmed that Shui Moyan had swallowed every single drop of the spring of life, he finally sighed in relief. I'm fine, he said, looking deeply into Shui Moyan's eyes before turning away and leaving the cave. The lightning that bound Shui Moyan departed at the same time, transforming back into electricity, shooting into Qin Lai's back, and vanishing. The wrappings that restrained Shui Moyan were gone. A complex look appeared in her bright yet grim eyes. She then sighed quietly, seeming to have accepted her fate. You can leave, Xianxia, she said softly. I'll be fine. Why, you're fine now, Sister Shui? Excitement came over Pan Xianxia and she felt as if she could dance. You don't need to worry about your shortened lifespan from now on, Emin? Shui Moyan nodded slightly, her face devoid of joy. Such a thing will no longer cause me trouble. Please leave first. I need to do my best to recover and absorb all the power of the spring of life. All right, Pan Xianxia headed out joyfully. All right, I'll leave right away. If I had refined and absorbed that spring of life, I would have been able to smoothly enter the fulfillment realm, Xianxia calmly said in a nearby cave. She wore an indifferent expression. Xianxia's words surprised Song Tingyu. Why didn't you tell anyone when we were in that village in the forbidden land of wood? Because I didn't need it to save my life, she replied. Shui Moyan is Senior Shui Li's only daughter. For their family to go through so much, it's terrible. Song Tingyu sighed. She pitied Shui Li's family from the bottom of her heart, inwardly lamenting everything that had happened to them. The fact that Qin Lai was willing to give up the spring of life and even requested everyone else to give it up as well. Xianxia paused for a moment, then softly said, He was right to do so. I wouldn't have followed him so shamelessly if he were truly heartless. Song Tingyu flashed a beautiful smile. If he were, I wouldn't have persisted in pursuing him in spite of his relationship with Ling Yusher. And what about in the future? Xianxia asked, a calm expression on her face. What will you do if he meets Ling Yushi again? A good man needs to be taken with your own hands. Song Tingyu's eyes sparkled brightly. As long as he hasn't married Ling Yushi, I will have the chance to snatch him out from under her. I wish you luck, Xie Jingxian said indifferently. Heh. Speaking of which, you're the one who knew him first. Song Tingyu changed the topic, her eyes shining with a strange light. Jingxian, we're the only ones here. So please tell me honestly, have you ever felt anything for him? Felt anything for him? Xie Jingxian lips curled into a snarl, disdain covering her exquisite face. She snorted sternly. When I first met him, he was just an apprentice artificer at Li's shop that belonged to Nebula Pavilion. How could I have possibly felt anything for him? Ah, I see. That's good. I can rest easy if that's the case. Song Tingyu's eyes were practically smiling for her. Where are they? Why have they disappeared? At the entrance of the valley where the previous battle had occurred, the leaders of the three barbarian tribes, Sen Yi, Jiayu, and Di Fei, led their men in a search throughout the area. However, they had yet to find anything. There's no point in thinking about it. They must have gone ahead of us already. Jiang Tianxing snorted. Form up in teams of 30 and make sure to stay close to other teams. Sen Yi ordered. We'll search the mountains one by one. If you discover them, do not rush into battle. Your top priority is to notify everyone else. Understood. The eastern barbarians shouted in unison. All of them moved to start combing through the mountains, determined to find and kill Qin Lai's group before looking for the ice spirit. We don't need to spread out and search, Jiayu suddenly said. I think I know where they are. She pointed at an icy mountain in the distance. They're halfway up that mountain, recovering their spirit energy in caves they made. Everyone looked at her in surprise. Jiayu felt just as perplexed as everyone else. Since the moment she entered the forbidden land of ice, every time Jiayu tried to condense her spirit energy, calm her mind, or adjust her breathing, she felt strange. Frost energy would fill her body and make it seem as if she had become one with the heavens and the earth. She would then feel an obvious increase in the power of her soul. Every time Jiayu cultivated within the forbidden land of ice, she clearly felt the changes occurring inside of her. Her cultivation quickly increased by leaps and bounds. She attributed all of this to the mystical secrets of the forbidden land of ice. She believed that the spirit art that she cultivated worked in perfect harmony with these secrets, allowing her to experience such godly abilities. I can vaguely sense them, Jiayu whispered. Her mind consciousness moved swiftly, her mind's eye acting as a bright spotlight, and accurately determined the position of Qin Lai's group halfway up the icy mountain in the distance. There's no way I could be wrong, Jiayu exclaimed, becoming more and more confident. This declaration amazed all of the eastern barbarians. After spending a moment in a daze, all of them regained their senses and couldn't help but excitedly praise Jiayu. Her divination made them jump for joy. Gao Yu, however, stood off to the side, aloof and silent. Traces of confusion could be seen in his eyes. Jiayu, you can truly sense where they are? Di Fei's brow furrowed as his face twisted in disbelief. All of us have been unable to utilize our soul perception since we entered the graveyard of gods. Are we to believe that you are somehow able to continue using yours? Sen Yi was just as shocked and confused as Di Fei, similarly unable to accept this reality. When we were in the forbidden lands of water and metal, I also couldn't use my soul consciousness to sense my surroundings, Jiayu said. She then took a deep, prolonged breath, as if she were trying to take in all of the frigid air of the forbidden land of ice. A pleasant expression appeared on her face and she continued, however, the forbidden land of ice is a different story. Here, my soul perception hasn't been affected at all. We'll obviously find out if she's telling the truth if we just go. All of the white barbarians shouted restlessly. Then, let's go, Sen Yi ordered, filled with a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Halfway up an icy mountain, inside of a small cave that could only accommodate 2 people, Song Tingyu sat beside Qin Lai, back pressed up against the wall as she questioned him out of concern. "You're fine, right?" She had heard Pan Xianxian's shouts, so she was aware of the fact that Pan Xianxian thought Qin Lai harbored evil intentions against Shui Moyan. She also knew that the illusory demon sect girl tried to kill him because of that misunderstanding. Since this knowledge prevented her from staying calm, Song Tingyu went to the cave that Qin Lai sat in to see how he was doing. "Of course, Pan Xianxian can't harm me to begin with," Qin Lai said with a shake of his head. "We fought the Scarlet Barbarians, and now they'll be more wary of us in the future. They will no longer split up and allow us to defeat them one group at a time," Song Tingyu said, clearly worried. "Before long, the Scarlet, White, and Black Barbarians will join forces. The next time we encounter Eastern Barbarians, we'll have all of them to deal with." Before coming over to Qin Lai's cave, Song Tingyu changed into a rose-colored dress. It clung tightly to her upper body and hung loosely below that, accentuating her already enchanting figure. It made her seem even more seductive than usual. Song Tingyu's figure alone was already stunning enough to influence other people. After all, in the Scarlet-Tide continent, she was the most famous and beautiful woman to begin with. As a result, when she painstakingly took the time to make herself pretty for Qin Lai, she made sure to be careful and demonstrate all of her beauty. She resembled a flower in full bloom, too beautiful to be taken in all at once. Song Tingyu felt like she had no control over the future. Maybe she felt that way because of how powerful the Eastern Barbarians were, but she ended up cherishing every second she spent with Qin Lai. As they spoke, she gently cozied up against Qin Lai's chest, releasing a bright light that gradually engulfed both of them. "Hey!" Song Tingyu said quietly. "Do you think we'll get out of the graveyard of gods alive? We just need to find an opportunity." Qin Lai casually replied, his expression stern. "We have to wait until the Eastern Barbarians enter the land of buried gods, separate again and drop their guard. If we strike when they do, it won't be impossible for us to reenact the glorious events that occurred in the Forbidden Land of Thunder. Besides, the blood progenitors' remains lay within the land of buried gods, and I won't leave until I have them." "For Shueli?" Song Tingyu asked. "The blood progenitors' remains will go to Shueli, but the rest will naturally belong to me." "What about the 6 pure soul springs? What happened to them?" "The treasure inside of my body swallowed them up along with my soul energy and blood. It seems to be nurturing something, but I can only feel it. I don't actually understand what it's doing." "You still can't remember anything about your past? It's like all of the memories that were wiped never existed." "I can't remember anything." The two sat in the cave together, cuddling and having an aimless, yet calming conversation about trivial things. 15 minutes later, Luo-chan emerged from his cave. Then Du Xiangyang exited his own. Their eyes adjusted to the brightness when they suddenly saw Qin Lai and Song Tingyu leave the same cave. Strange expressions leaped to their faces. Du Xiangyang coughed dryly, then casually asked, "What were you, doing in Sister Shue's cave earlier, Qin Lai?" "I helped administer the spring of life," Qin Lai answered, raising an eyebrow. "Ha ha ha." Du Xiangyang laughed awkwardly. "So it was like that. I initially thought you were doing something else." "Your mind is so dirty," Song Tingyu exclaimed, her face full of disdain. Luo Chen's face turned red. "Indeed," Shui Moyan interrupted as she also walked out and came over. Pan Qianqian followed close behind her. "Your minds certainly are quite dirty." Du Xiangyang and Luo Chen felt even more embarrassed. "What's our next move, Qin Lai?" Xia Jingxian asked, approaching the group. "Are we still going to enter the frozen lake?" "No," Qin Lai responded, shaking his head. "We will wait for the Eastern Barbarians to enter first. If the demon-sealing tombstone doesn't appear, the ice spirit probably won't make any moves. You might need to go first." Du Xiangyang climbed atop a block of ice and looked across the dazzling surface of the frozen lake nearby. The ice spirit should be at the bottom of the lake, but breaking such a thick layer of ice won't be easy. "Does the demon-sealing tombstone have a way to break through the ice?" Qin Lai asked in surprise. "Perhaps," Du Xiangyang shrugged, not daring to make any uncertain claims. Qin Lai hesitated for a moment. Then he nodded, saying, I guess I'll lend the Eastern barbarians a helping hand. Whoosh! The demon-sealing tombstone emerged from Qin Lai's spatial ring. 7 dazzling divine lights suddenly shot out of the tombstone, merging together to form a chain that was thousands of meters long. The resplendent chain of light soared through the sky, as if it were traveling the galaxy, dragging the demon-sealing tombstone behind it. A trail of colorful lights were left in the tombstone's wake as it shot toward the vast frozen lake. The demon-sealing tombstone. Atop an icy mountain peak 5,000 meters away, the Eastern barbarians looked toward the frozen lake and broke out into a commotion. The white barbarians began to bellow and scream. They've released the demon-sealing tombstone. We were definitely heading in the right direction. Some Eastern barbarians, however, started getting confused. What should we do? Should we go find them? Maybe we should chase the demon-sealing tombstone. The demon-sealing tombstone could determine the location of the 7 spirits as well as seal them. Now that it appeared, all of the Eastern barbarians began to feel anxious. This was because they knew that the demon-sealing tombstone had definitely gone to find the ice spirit. Let's forget about Qin Lai's group and follow the demon-sealing tombstone, San Yi shouted. Let's find the ice spirit first. They should be following the demon-sealing tombstone, Di Fei added. As long as we follow it too, we'll definitely cross paths with them again. All right, let's change directions and move toward the demon-sealing tombstone, Jia Yu commanded. With the sudden appearance of the demon-sealing tombstone, the powerful group of Eastern barbarians immediately turned their spearhead-shaped formation and began rushing toward the frozen lake. Back on the mountain where Qin Lai's group was, Du Xiangyang narrowed his eyes and looked at the surroundings below them. He pointed at the Eastern barbarians, saying, well, that definitely got their attention. The white, scarlet, and black barbarians are all present. More than 200 of them were initially headed toward us. Thank goodness we released the demon-sealing tombstone, Song Tingyu said in amazement. They probably would have surrounded us if we hadn't. How did they know where we were? Xie Jingxian asked, her expression serious. Because of Jia Yu. Qin Lai took a deep breath. My guess is, the ice spirit is corroding that white barbarian girl without her knowing. She probably possesses the perception ability of the ice spirit and will eventually gain extraordinary control over the forbidden land of ice. However, she probably doesn't even realize it. You're saying, the ice spirit has almost completely taken over her soul? Song Tingyu exclaimed in shock. That should be the case, Qin Lai replied solemnly. None of our business, Du Xiangyang snarled. As they spoke, the demon-sealing tombstone had already reached the air above the vast frozen lake. Rays of sacred light began streaming in every direction as the tombstone put on an impressive display of power. 7 blinding divine lights pierced down from the heavens like ancient dragons. Even though they were extremely far away, Qin Lai's group could still hear the loud rumbling coming from deep within the earth. They could see the surrounding glaciers and mountains shake and crack. The vast frozen lake's thick layer of ice began to shatter under the bombardment of the tombstone's 7 godly lights. CR crack. Bang. Chink chink chink. Pieces of ice hundreds of meters long and thicker than a person shot from the surface of the frozen lake like translucent, crystalline spears. Every single spear radiated a harsh, frosty glow. Boom, boom, boom. These incomparably large spears of ice crashed into the surrounding's icy mountains, causing them to break apart. Bang! More than a dozen of these ice spears struck a glacier that was thousands of meters tall, making it collapse instantly. Frigid air swept up countless blade-shaped ice fragments from the wreckage of that glacier, blowing them in every direction. Boom! More gigantic spears of ice shot from the frozen lake, burying themselves deep into another glacier. They compromised its structural integrity and made it collapse as well. No! Qin Lai cried. Everyone anxiously turned to look at him, eyes filled with shock. They had no clue what was going on. The ice spears and ice blades, all of the ice fragments, they're being subtly controlled by the ice spirit. Qin Lai's realization stunned them all. Quick! Look at the Eastern barbarians! Du Xiangyang cried. They could only see the hundreds of Eastern barbarians darting through the gaps between the glaciers. The barbarians were trying to escape as quickly as they could, but because they were so far away, Qin Lai's group could only hear their faint tragic cries. However, they could plainly see just how dangerous of a situation the Eastern barbarians were in. Several icy masses surrounding the Eastern barbarians burst apart, turning into chunks of ice. As if they had eyes, icy spears and knives the size of hills flew toward them. Numerous Eastern barbarians were either flattened into meat patties, shredded into bloody pulp, or broken like ragdolls. Others were pierced by ice spears and blades, their shields of light broken. They were ultimately devoured by the forbidden land of ice's frigid winds. In such a short period of time, a third of the Eastern barbarians died. Climb to the peak of this icy mountain, Qin Lai cried, a bad feeling washing over him. The ice spirit is targeting us as well. We're about to get hit. Without hesitation, Du Xiangyang and the others immediately circulated their spirit energy to the limit as they rushed to the peak as quickly as they could. Thousands of meters away, celestial artifact Sex Feng Eo pointed into the distance, his expression pale. Look over there. An ice storm has taken shape. The ice spirit must be there. Yi Hao, Huang Zhuli, Yumen, Su Yan, and Feng Eo were currently at the very edge of total despair. Finally identifying the location of the ice spirit, all of them gritted their teeth and started rushing toward the ice storm, completely disregarding their own safety. In the depths of the forbidden land of ice, the demon-sealing tombstone floated high above the surface of the frozen lake, shooting ray after ray of dazzling divine light downward. The frozen lake's giant, reflective surface burst under the force of the barrage, sending crystalline spears of ice flying throughout the area and crashing into nearby glaciers and mountains. Enormous chunks of ice began crashing downward as a result, and cold sheen radiated from the countless shards of ice shooting through the sky as a bone-chilling energy soaked the area, threatening to freeze everything. The Eastern barbarians had experienced countless struggles and hardships. They managed to enter the Graveyard of Gods from the territories west of the Land of Chaos and were now looking for the remains in the Land of Buried Gods, only to become victims of this ice storm in the Forbidden Land of Ice. The ice storm had completely besieged the hundreds of Eastern barbarians traveling through a valley between two icy mountains. It was as if they had entered a freezing hell. A spear of ice more than 500 meters long, one that was reminiscent of a crystalline ice dragon, came soaring towards them from the frozen lake in the distance. It seemed to have a mind of its own, savagely soaring straight toward the densest group of the barbarians. The ice spear descended from the sky, piercing the ground and engulfing the area with a frigid chill. All of the Eastern barbarians trembled in fear. Crack! Bang bang bee bang! The giant ice spear abruptly fragmented into hundreds of smaller spears dozens of meters long that rained down upon them. Numerous barbarians released tragic shrieks as the spears impaled them, dying instantly. As all of this took place, a snow-covered mountain behind the Eastern barbarians shook violently, then collapsed. Humongous icy boulders hurtled down from that mountain and into the midst of the Eastern barbarians. Those unable to get out of their paths were crushed into a bloody paste. In an extremely short amount of time, around 100 Eastern barbarians had either died or suffered grievous injuries. They wailed and howled like ghosts or eerie wolves, trying to find a way to survive this calamity. Their thoughts of killing all Land of Chaos practitioners had disappeared, their previously high spirits completely non-existent. The Eastern barbarians were being brutally eradicated. Meanwhile, Qin Lai's group did everything they could to rush to the top of the icy mountain they were on. All of them had become frantic, each of them exuding spirit energy that radiated a dazzling glow and shocking, colorful light. They tried their best to find shelter. Having seen what was happening to the Eastern barbarians, they knew that the lower they were, the more danger they were in. Being at the peak of this icy mountain would allow them to avoid the aftermath of other mountains collapsing, the bombardments of icy boulders, and the ruthless icy assaults shooting from the frozen lake. This doesn't make any sense, Du Xiangyang shouted, scared out of his wits. The ice shooting from the frozen lake shouldn't be striking so accurately. It's almost as if it's intelligent. The ice spirit is using its power to guide the ice. Qianlai took a deep breath, his expression as tranquil as water. The ice spirit is hidden in the depths of the frozen lake. Upon sensing the terrifying threat that is the demon-sealing tombstone, it began to fight back. It considers all living things in the graveyard of God's enemies that need to be killed. When the wood spirit formed a soul connection Yi Hao, the demon-sealing tombstone wasn't able to seal it. It was only after that connection broke that the tombstone could do anything, Song Tingyu said. Then, her aura abruptly changed as she took shining armor out of her spatial ring and put it on. She now seemed dignified and intimidating. If the ice spirit has formed a similar connection to Jiayu, the demon-sealing tombstone won't be able to seal it. Doesn't that mean we need to do the same thing here? Realization spread across everyone's faces. In the forbidden land of wood, Yi Hao had made a deal with the wood spirit, allowing it to take some of his energy. That made it impossible for the demon-sealing tombstone to lock onto its target. Were it not for Xie Jingshuan's shocking intervention during that chaotic battle, breaking the wood spirit's guard and interrupting its connection to Yi Hao, the demon-sealing tombstone might not have been able to seal the wood spirit. The earth spirit also formed that kind of connection with Di Fei, Du Xiangyang said, his expression wavering slightly. The ice spirit is dominating everything, Luo Chen exclaimed. As soon as he said this, everyone stopped speaking and looked into the distance with fear in their eyes. Between the demon-sealing tombstone's position high in the sky and the enormous frozen lake below it, giant spears of ice floated into the air, controlled by some invisible power. Then, like frozen dragons, they shot directly toward the mountain peak Qianlai's group was at, carried by bone-chilling currents of wind. These spears of ice flashed with a crystalline glow and contained the power of pure frost. They seemed capable of freezing everything in their vicinity. Despair welled up in the hearts of everyone in Qianlai's group as dozens of ice spears carrying terrifying waves of frigid air approached them. "Good Lord!" Du Xiangyang exclaimed with a grim expression on his face. "Those ice spears are clearly coming for us. There isn't the slightest error in their trajectory. The ice spirit's control over them is just too frightening. This icy mountain peak is going to collapse once they hit," Luo Chen shouted. "Those ice spears could also just slaughter us at the same time. Maybe we could scatter and flee?" Pan Qianxian suggested. "There wouldn't be any point," Qianlai said, forcing himself to calm down. "The ice spirit controls everything in the forbidden land of ice. As long as we remain within its domain, it'll be able to track us down regardless of where we go or how we try to hide. Even if we scatter, those spears of ice will adjust accordingly, firmly locking on to every single one of us." "Then what should we do?" Pan Qianxian asked anxiously. The location of Qianlai's group could be considered quite far from the frozen lake. Since the spears of ice were so large, they weren't actually moving that quickly. They still had time to prepare. The demon-sealing tombstone is in the process of breaking through the surface of the frozen lake to force the ice spirit out. Since it acts as a natural barrier, I'm afraid that the tombstone won't be able to do anything before it's destroyed. Qianlai watched the dozens of ice spears slowly approaching, his head beginning to throb painfully. The ice spirit is definitely much stronger than the wood and thunder spirits. This strange land must have provided this guardian spirit of the graveyard of gods with some unexpected benefits. That explains why it dares to oppose the demon-sealing tombstone. You're saying that, before the surface of the frozen lake is destroyed, all of the forbidden land of ice is under ice spirit's control. Du Xiangyang summarized. That's one way to put it. Qianlai thought to himself for a moment, but couldn't come up with a good plan. We need to hold on until the demon-sealing tombstone has destroyed that barrier of ice, entered the frozen lake, and forced the ice spirit to flee. We will only be able to avoid those ice spears when the tombstone has suppressed the ice spirit to the point that it can no longer focus on targeting us. Du Xiangyang laughed bitterly. "I'm afraid we won't last until then." Everyone's expressions were grim. Looking at their present situation, It was clear that the ice spirit wanted to take advantage of the time it took the demon-sealing tombstone to break through the frozen lake. It sought to first kill all living things that had entered its domain. Perhaps it also knew that, of the people who were present, one had bonded with the demon-sealing tombstone. As long as the ice spirit killed all of the martial practitioners it could find, it will have killed the one bonded to the demon-sealing tombstone and diminished its power. It would then have nothing to fear. The ice spirit of the forbidden land of ice was definitely the strongest and smartest of the 7 spirits. It was also the easiest one to enrage. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dozens of ice spears whistled across the frost-filled sky, gradually approaching the ice mountain peak where Qin Lai's group stood. All of them went pale at the sight. It didn't matter how much they racked their brains. In the face of those ice spears, which seemed able to exterminate everything in the forbidden land of ice, none of them could think of a way to deal with them. They had watched as a great calamity fell upon the Eastern barbarians. The Eastern barbarians, originally numbering over 200, could not hold on for even half an hour as more than half of them were killed. The more powerful San Yi, Difei, and Jiayu also didn't have any way to deal with the icy assault and could only continue to dodge. Of the ice spears flying through the sky, only a few had actually gone toward the barbarians. Just those few ice spears had already contributed to taking the lives of over half the Eastern barbarians, causing them to despair at the terrifying hell they found themselves in. As for Qin Lai's group, they were facing dozens of ice spears, more than 10 times the number that attacked the Eastern barbarians. Suddenly, Xue Moyan spoke up. I should be able to destroy several of the ice spears. Everyone instantly turned to look at her. I can destroy several of them by using Blood Fiend Sek's ultimate treasure one more time. Xue Moyan wore a calm expression. However, I don't have enough power to destroy all of them. I already exhausted a lot of my blood spirit energy in the previous battle. Don't be reckless. You can't recklessly call upon the bloodthirsty dragon again, Qin Lai shouted. All the Spring of Life did was help you recover your vitality and break free of your short lifespan. It didn't help you recover your blood energy, and there's no way you could have recovered enough of it in so little time. You can't keep using such a tyrannical spirit artifact. Don't you cultivate the blood spirit art as well, Qin Lai? Pan Xianxia asked. Can't you use your blood energy to control that heaven-grade spirit artifact? Everyone's eyes suddenly lit up at the idea. Me? Qin Lai exclaimed, momentarily confused. This is Blood Fiend Sek's treasure and has bonded with Sister Xue's soul. How would I be able to use its power? The bloodthirsty dragon isn't bonded to my soul, Xue Moyan said quietly. It has always refused to connect to me since my lifespan has been short since birth. Then, how about letting Qin Lai try? Pan Xianxian asked. That? Xue Moyan was stunned by Pan Xianxian's proposal. She thought to herself for a while, then said, there could be complications. The bloodthirsty dragon has a horrible temper, which can be seen from how I am unable to control it. I'm afraid that it may hurt Qin Lai, and even if he could use it, he'd need to use a terrifying amount of blood energy. Either way, Qin Lai would be injured. Can't he recover his blood energy using the demon-sealing tombstone? Du Xiangyang interrupted. Let me try, Qin Lai pleaded. As of this moment, they didn't have any better ideas for how to deal with the ice spirit's attacks. He had already seen the terrifying power of Blood Fiend Sek's heaven-grade spirit artifact. If he could wield the bloodthirsty dragon's destructive power 1 or 2 levels stronger than the power it had demonstrated against the Scarlet Barbarians earlier, perhaps he'd be able to destroy the incoming spears of ice. I suppose you could try it, Xue Moyan said reluctantly, taking out Blood Fiend Sek's great spirit artifact of slaughter. Fine, go ahead. As a heaven-grade spirit artifact, the bloodthirsty dragon required an enormous amount of blood energy to release its terrifying power. When Xue Moyan used it earlier, she killed 10 or so late-stage Nether Passage Realm Scarlet Barbarians with ease, displaying the incredible killing power of the bloodthirsty dragon while making Jiang Tianxing and Difei flee like the wind. Since no one else in the group had a plan to deal with the incredibly massive spears of ice that were currently flying toward them, they could only put their hopes on Qin Lai and the bloodthirsty dragon. Let me try, Qin Lai said. suddenly materializing above Xuemoyan's snow-white arm. The bloodthirsty dragon's enormous ancient bones floated in front of everyone and roared. Qin Lai, drip some of your blood on it, so that it can familiarize itself with your blood energy, Xuemoyan said. Okay. Qin Lai took a deep breath. A drop of scarlet blood emerged from the tip of one of his fingers like a scarlet pearl and flew over to the great mystical spirit artifact. Whoosh! The instant the drop of blood landed on the bloodthirsty dragon's sanguine skull, the entirety of the dragon skeleton erupted in brilliant bloody flames. Plip, plip, plip. Blood continued to emerge from Qin Lai's finger and fly toward the bloody bone dragon, drop after drop. The intensity of the fierce bloody flames grew with each drop that splashed against the spirit artifact. Like a sponge soaking up water, the bloody bone dragon absorbed every drop of blood, gradually releasing apocalyptic waves of fiendish blood energy. Circulate the blood spirit art and try to connect with all of the blood within the bloodthirsty dragon, Xuemoyan said. Try to feel the energy of the spirit artifact and control it with your own blood energy. Qin Lai trembled. Prior to Xuemoyan's instructions, Qin Lai already felt the horror lurking within this heaven-grade spirit artifact. He could sense the potent energy disappear from his blood as soon as it touched the bloodthirsty dragon's sanguine skeleton. Then, at this very instant, a mixture of emotions overwhelmed his senses. Violence, madness, bloodlust, and the desire to destroy appeared within him, threatening to drown him. Then, Qin Lai's eyes became a shocking scarlet. He seemed to have changed into a bloodthirsty beast that, after being imprisoned for hundreds of millions of years, had finally regained its freedom. Fiendish blood energy erupted from Qin Lai and the bloodthirsty dragon at the same time, shooting toward the heavens and gathering into one mass that resembled a thick river of blood. A deafening roar resounded from the bloodthirsty dragon's maw, booming forth without end. Seemingly boundless amounts of blood energy formed a sanguine stream of blood and shot forward. A demented will, one that sought to end the world and extinguish all life, existed within that blood energy. Boom! The river of blood rushed into the cluster of ice spears in the air. The resulting explosions created a fantastical sight. The dozens of ice spears that had been flying toward Qin Lai's group, each of which resembled ice dragons that were several hundred meters long, originally looked extremely majestic. Their majesty had been otherworldly. However, the moment the river of blood shot into the midst of the ice spears, all of them exploded. The dozens of ice spears simultaneously burst apart. Tens of thousands of smaller ice spears hurtled down through the freezing sky like rain. It was as if swords of ice were stabbing into the earth. The bloodthirsty dragon soared into the sky with a roar, a terrifying aura of destruction and slaughter radiating from its enormous body. Under the entire group's gaze, the bloody bone dragon flew out like a bloody bolt of wild lightning, piercing through the sky and tearing its way to the frozen lake in an instant. Titch this. The jaws of Luo Chen, Song Tingyu, Du Xiangyang, and Pan Xianxian dropped as they watched the scene above the frozen lake unfold. Qin Lai and Xuemoyan were also stunned. At this moment, the bloody bone dragon hovered over the frozen lake alongside the demon-sealing tombstone. As the demon-sealing tombstone continued to release its 7 godly lights and bombard the lake's thick, frozen surface, it released another bloody streak of light that contained an intense, fiendish bloody energy. This bloody light shot toward the bone dragon's sanguine skull. The demon-sealing tombstone started transferring fiendish blood energy to the bloodthirsty dragon. This infusion of intense, fiendish bloody light made the bloody bone dragon's body expand as if it were being filled with air. In mere seconds, the bloodthirsty dragon actually doubled in size. The sanguine bones that made up its body began to glitter with brilliant bloody light. It looked extremely radiant. The bloody bone dragon unleashed another heaven-shaking roar, exuding an incomparably terrifying aura as it charged headfirst into the surface of the frozen lake. Crick, crick, crock, crock. The surface of the lake, which resembled a huge mirror, fractured. Cracks quickly spread across the ice, sometimes stuttering in places but continuous in others. The ice continued to fracture under everyone's shocked gazes, fissures spreading across the frozen lake until, several seconds later, a section of it collapsed inward. The demon-sealing tombstone followed the bloody bone dragon closely, the bloody fiendish light it released resembling a long sanguine rope that tethered them to each other. This rope continuously fed potent energy to the bloodthirsty dragon. Breaking through the layer of ice, the bloody bone dragon roared once more and charged into the empty cavern below. Immediately after the dragon skeleton entered the empty depths of the frozen lake, the demon-sealing tombstone remained suspended in the sky, the bloody light linking the two together. In the next moment, the constant barrage of ice spears and continuous shaking of the mountains and glaciers in the area all came to a stop at the same time. With the destruction of the frozen lake's surface and the bloody bone dragon having entered its depths, a strange calm came over the originally violent, chaotic, forbidden land of ice. This sudden turn of events was a godsend to the screaming eastern barbarians. Since the ice spirit had stopped attacking them, the tragic barbarians lucky enough to survive finally got some room to breathe. Just like the surviving barbarians, Qianlai's group fell into state of confusion and lethargy. No one had expected that such a heaven-defying change would occur when Blood Fiend Sek's terrifying tool of slaughter was given to Qianlai. Upon receiving Qianlai's blood, the bloodthirsty dragon destroyed dozens of ice spears, using the stream of blood energy that came from its body. It hadn't even needed to move. Qianlai's group thought that their deadly crisis had been resolved a bit too easily. Without waiting for anyone to recover their wits, the bloodthirsty dragon roared, charged out, and formed a mysterious link with the demon-sealing tombstone. Then, borrowing the tombstone's fiendish blood energy, it destroyed the thick layer of ice that made up the frozen lake's surface and forcefully charged into its empty depths. The ice spirit's control over the forbidden land of ice had been broken in an instant. How could it be like this? Pan Xianxia quietly asked, closing her gaping mouth. The look on her face expressed her amazement well enough without it. Big brother Qin, your control over the power of the bloodthirsty dragon is actually so much better than Sister Xue's. That was incredible. Everyone else silently thought the same thing. From their point of view, it seemed as if Qianlai were the true owner of the bloodthirsty dragon. Only after coming into Qianlai's possession did this terrifying killing tool of Blood Fiend Sect truly demonstrate its incredible power. Xue Moyan, in comparison, seemed as if she had just been holding on to the spirit artifact. She had never been able to put on such a violent display. It seems like it takes to you quite well, Xue Moyan sputtered, her face bitter. Qianlai remained silent. He had been in a state of total shock this entire time. He believed that Blood Fiend Sek's terrifying killing tool could only display such frightening might under his control because he was the owner of the demon-sealing tombstone. After all, ever since he got his blood on the tombstone, he had been able to use his blood to connect with the demon-sealing tombstone and the fiendish blood energy inside of it. Qianlai had similarly gotten his blood on the bloodthirsty dragon. Upon doing so, an unexpected yet miraculous change occurred between him, the demon-sealing tombstone, and the bloodthirsty dragon. The bloodthirsty dragon and demon-sealing tombstone had mysteriously resonated with each other through his blood. He never expected such a development to occur. The bloodthirsty dragon required an enormous amount of blood energy to show its might, one which Qianlai could not afford to give. This meant that it was impossible for him to fuel the bloodthirsty dragon and allow it to display the terrifying power of a heaven-grade spirit artifact. The most power he could unleash by himself was probably around the same amount that Xue Moyan could. Neither he nor Xue Moyan could fully display the bloodthirsty dragon's power, but the demon-sealing tombstone could. After all, the demon-sealing tombstone contained an endless amount of fiendish blood energy. This fiendish blood energy seemed to miraculously connect with the bloodthirsty dragon. The bloodthirsty dragon had somehow reached a tacit understanding with the demon-sealing tombstone through Qianlai's blood. It then received the tombstone's blood energy, enough to finally display its incredible power. I think I finally understand who the fiendish blood energy within the demon-sealing tombstone came from, Xue Moyan said all of a sudden. Everyone looked at her simultaneously. Who? Qin Lai asked. The blood progenitor. Shui Moyan took a deep breath, an incredibly serious expression on her face. The bloodthirsty dragon felt the aura of the progenitor's energy within the demon's sealing tombstone, and by absorbing some of that energy, it could display its true might. This revelation shocked Qin Lai. After a bit of thought, he nodded in agreement, saying, "You're probably right. The master of the graveyard of gods must have extracted the blood progenitor's fiendish blood energy from his remains and sealed it into the demon's sealing tombstone as its first kind of energy. The blood energy I absorbed and converted into my own blood energy must have been the blood progenitor's. Only the fiendish blood energy of the bloodthirsty dragon's creator could truly rouse it. A blood energy which currently existed in Qin Lai's body. A portion Qin Lai's blood energy and the power within his blood came from the blood progenitor. Therefore, after Qin Lai received it and gave it his blood, the bloodthirsty dragon displayed miraculous power, much more than when Shui Moyan had been controlling it. Crack, crack, crack. A gargantuan fissure appeared in the remaining ice of the frozen lake's surface. Streaks of bloody light burst through that fissure from within the vast space that made up the frozen lake, releasing terrifying waves of energy. Since the frozen lake had fractured and collapsed, the ice spirit's control over the forbidden land of ice had accordingly reached its lowest point. The bloodthirsty dragon is causing wanton destruction throughout the depths of the frozen lake and destroying the ice spirit's icy barrier. Based on the current situation, the barrier that makes up the surface of the lake should completely break soon enough, Du Xiangyang exclaimed, excitement growing on his face. The land of buried gods should lie directly below this frozen lake. Once the barrier has been broken, it should appear immediately. His words caused everyone to become excited as well, their eyes bright. We should rush to the frozen lake since our crisis has been temporarily resolved. Luochen shouted, eyes aglow. Go! Everyone cried in unison. Qin Lai and the others were currently in high spirits because the Eastern barbarians had suffered heavy losses and Qin Lai had managed to rouse the bloodthirsty dragon and cause terrifying amounts of destruction. They no longer considered the Eastern barbarians a threat. Is it finally over? Down in the valley between two mountains, the Eastern barbarians finally stopped panicking. Shocked expressions covered their faces as they realized how peaceful the world had become. They had lost more than 100 people in a short time. Over half of their original force of over 200 Eastern barbarians had died to the ice storm of the forbidden land of ice. The survivors surveyed the area, corpses of their fallen comrades littering the ground around them. What happened? Someone asked. Ice came from the frozen lake in the distance, smashed into an icy mountain, and caused an avalanche of boulders. We got caught in it. Blood Fiend Sek's ultimate treasure, the bloodthirsty dragon, charged into the frozen lake. The demon's sealing tombstone is floating above it right now. Jiang Tianxing's eyes flashed with excitement. The lake is about to shatter, and the land of buried gods will appear very soon. Get ready to move, everyone. Try to get inside of the frozen lake. He didn't care about the lives of the Eastern barbarians at all. Let's go, Jia Yu shouted. To the frozen lake. She could feel a voice coming from the depths of the frozen lake, urging her to move as quickly as possible. A strangely enchanting voice seemed to be communicating with her through her true soul. Now is not the time to argue, San Yi ordered in response. The land of buried gods has always been our true goal in the graveyard of gods. No matter how heavy our losses are, we must complete our mission. Go! The Eastern barbarians ignored the corpses of their tribesmen and moved forward. Look! Above the frozen lake. What is that? The demon sealing tombstone. That's the demon sealing tombstone. After a difficult journey, Yi Hao, Huang Zhuli, Su Yan, Yumen, and Feng Yeo finally reached the top of another mountain. They had arrived at a good time. At this point in time, the ice spirit had just finished its frenzy and the forbidden land of ice had finally become calm. The five of them stared down at the frozen lake from the top of the mountain. Seeing the demon sealing tombstone hovering high above the lake, they were all but certain about the location of the land of buried gods and the ice spirit. This is it. Yi Hao became excited. We're finally headed in the right direction. The frozen lake looks like it's about to shatter. Feng Io's gaze grew intense. The land of buried gods is probably going to be exposed soon. Let's get to the land of buried gods at the fastest speed possible. You men shouted. All 5 of them were in agreement. Keeping their shields of light up, they swallowed medicinal pills first so that they could get back into fighting condition. At almost the same time, Qianlai and the others charged down the peak toward the frozen lake, hoping to be the first to see the land of buried gods. Crack, crack, crack. The thick layer of ice that made up the surface of the vast frozen lake continued to fracture and break apart. Underneath the frozen lake, bloody lights attacked the ice from below, charging about like countless swords made of blood. The demon-sealing tombstone floated high in the sky and continued to use its 7 prismatic lights to assault the surface of the lake that protected the ice spirit. It was trying to seal the ice spirit as fast as possible. The ice spirit was hiding in the depths of the frozen lake. It was strong, intelligent, and already aware of the situation. It controlled the forbidden land of ice and fought back desperately. Aou. A grief-laden howl echoed from deep within the frozen lake. The bloody bone dragon flew out from the gap in the surface of the lake and shot into the sky alongside bloody lights. Having grown to nearly 2 times its original massive size, the bloody bone dragon writhed in the air, howling unhappily. The small figure of a person seemed to be sitting atop its head. Although the more specific features of that person's appearance were indistinct, their body looked as if it were made of bloody jade. It shone with blinding bloody light like a sanguine jewel shaped like a person. They didn't give off any soul fluctuations, but their body emanated a dense aura of blood. The remains of the blood progenitor. The bloodthirsty dragon charged into the frozen lake to retrieve him. Jiang Tianxing was the first to shout. The land of buried gods is definitely at the bottom of the frozen lake. There's no doubt about it. The remains of the blood progenitor. Xuemoyan also shouted in shock. Those are definitely his remains. Everyone could feel the bloody bone dragon's intense sorrow. This heaven-grade spirit artifact seemed to possess simple intelligence. Upon finding out that its creator, its first owner, had died long ago, couldn't help but grieve and howl angrily. Look, Yi Hao shouted. That's Blood Fiend Sec's ultimate treasure. The heaven-grade artifact, the bloodthirsty dragon. Aou. The bloodthirsty dragon howled toward the horizon. The bloody lights that surrounded it formed ancient glyphs that resembled dragons. Hundreds of thousands of those glyphs hurtled down toward the frozen lake. Boom, boom, boom. Earth-shaking explosions rang out from the ice below. The assault of the dragon-shaped glyphs completely shattered the thick layer of ice making up the frozen lake's surface. The moment the frozen lake shattered, the 7 divine lights of the demon-sealing tombstone reached down like the hand of a giant. The gazes of everyone remotely nearby focused on the frozen lake. Bang! The frozen lake shattered, and ice accompanied by streaming lights shot outward, carried toward the eastern barbarians like an astonishingly frigid wind. The eastern barbarians cursed, wailing like ghouls as they scattered in every direction. However, before many of them had the chance to flee, their blood stopped flowing. Under the influence of the extreme cold, they froze to death. Eastern barbarians of all 3 tribes fled in 3 directions. Thousands of icy lights headed directly for Jiayu. The dozens of white barbarians by her side couldn't do a thing before they were frozen into statues. Even Gao Yu was no exception. Once the frigid winds swept over them, Gao Yu became a crystalline stature like the white barbarians. Yet his eyes still shone with a dark, evil light. Deep within his eyes, countless ghosts floated around to form a strange glyph. That glyph seemed like the unyielding will of the evil god, but also radiated an evil power like the remnant soul of an evil god. The ghostly glyph in his eyes slowed the formation of the ice around his body. Gao Yu was still stuck inside of the ice, but he retained his consciousness and could look around. He saw thousands of icy lights enter Jia Yu's body, streaming into her like water flowing into the sea. Jia Yu immediately froze as well. However, this type of freeze differed from the one that killed everyone else. She became a person of ice, but the blood that flowed inside of her didn't freeze. Instead, an unfathomable aura appeared within her. She suddenly gave off the feeling that she had become one with the forbidden land of ice and was able to control this section of the world. Her eyes became as white as snow and devoid of emotion. Something's wrong, Gao Yu thought, a chill washing over his heart. He immediately realized that the ice spirit had taken over Jia Yu. The Jia Yu of this moment was nothing like the Jia Yu of the past. She was no longer the white barbarian girl he was familiar with, but the ice spirit, the ruler of the forbidden land of ice. Whoosh! The demon-sealing tombstone arrived, having followed the tens of thousands of icy lights through the sky. It hovered above Jia Yu's and Gao Yu's heads, its dazzling godly lights writhing through the air like the tentacles of an octopus, as if they were trying to decide which one of them was the ice spirit. The prismatic lights roamed back and forth above their heads, yet they didn't attack Jia Yu. It seemed as if they were blind. Crack, crack. All of a sudden, the frigid gusts of wind froze Di Fei, who had been fleeing in another direction. Di Fei howled as an extremely cold power of frost entered his mind and reached his soul lake where his true soul was. Di Fei's soul lake immediately froze. The power of frost sealed his true soul, seemingly cutting off his connection to the earth spirit. In that instant, the aura of the earth spirit radiated from Di Fei's body, peerlessly pure and bright. The frigid winds caught a black barbarian woman with a gentle appearance, ice encroaching on her just like Di Fei. Her eyes shook with fear and she cried, "Don't hurt us!" Only a faint soul shadow could be seen in her. The calm, pure power of water emanated from her body, making her stand out as well. "You!" San Yi shouted in shock and confusion. "What's happening to you?" "She's been possessed by the water spirit," a black barbarian shouted in realization. Then Di Fei noticed someone at the peak of a nearby mountain. A scarlet barbarian stood there, completely encased in ice, but his body radiated the power of metal. Didn't you die long ago?" Di Fei shouted. Ka Deng, this barbarian called Ka Deng, had been killed by black voodoo cult martial practitioners in the forbidden land of metal. Di Fei had been the one to bury him. Yet that Ka Deng now appeared once again, showing up in the forbidden land of ice. The auras of Di Fei, Ka Deng, and the woman San Yi called Yu had only been exposed because the power of frost had suddenly invaded their bodies. Dense auras surrounded each of them. Powerful earth radiated from Di Fei, sharp metal from Ka Deng, and gentle water from Yu. The demon-sealing tombstone had been hanging high above Jia Yu's head, searching for the ice spirit in order to seal it. Since the ice spirit had taken over Jia Yu's body, hijacking her soul, the demon-sealing tombstone was confused. At this time, the aura of the earth, metal, and water spirits were clearly exposed, and the demon-sealing tombstone suddenly had targets. The demon-sealing tombstone that originally sought to seal the ice spirit immediately changed targets. It moved away from Jia Yu, turning its focus to the earth, metal, and water spirits. A terrifying change came over Di Fei, Ka Deng, and Yu. These three had been in different places, but at this time they started moving. These three barbarians in the Nether Passage realm actually flew through the air, becoming gold, yellow, and white lights that shot toward the center of the frozen lake. The demon-sealing tombstone followed behind them. Above the lake, the bloody bone dragon continued to howl mournfully. The body of the blood progenitor still sat atop its skull, giving off an intimidating ruby light. At this time, Qin Lai's group was approaching the frozen lake from one side. Yi Hao, Huang Zhuli, Feng Yio, Yumen, and Su Yan were on the side opposite to them. Since half of them had died, the eastern barbarians had scattered and were now fleeing in every direction. Crick, crock. Jia Yu's eyes were an icy blue. She twisted her neck, and her joints resounded with satisfyingly crisp sounds. Jia Yu, whose soul had been taken over by the ice spirit, didn't so much as glance at the tribesmen around her. Once the demon-sealing tombstone departed, she turned into an icy light and left for the frozen lake as well. Snap! Soon after Jia Yu left, the ice around Gao Yu exploded, and he calmly emerged from the resulting frost. The white barbarians around him were not so fortunate. Their souls had been frozen to death. Gao Yu silently headed in the direction Jia Yu had gone, a frown on his face. "Look!" Du Xiangyang shouted. "Down at the bottom of the lake." Feng Iyo shouted as well. "Look at the bottom." Having suppressed their earlier panic, the eastern barbarians gathered at another side of the lake. They had strange looks in their eyes as they peered into its depths. The surface of the frozen lake had completely shattered by this point. It seemed to have been the ceiling of another world. That ceiling had cracked, and now the land of buried gods that lay within the frozen lake was exposed. Below the cold white mist within the frozen lake, a desolate, endless plain came into view. Numerous vast, ancient palaces were strewn across that desolate plain. Some had already collapsed into ruin, leaving behind traces of a bygone era. The bodies of enormous beings could be seen among the clusters of ancient, ruined palaces. There were giants hundreds of meters tall and skeletal remains of huge, vicious monsters of old. One could even see smaller bodies flashing with attention-grabbing lights, clearly belonging to beings that possessed high levels of intelligence when they were alive. Long dried blood covered this desolate misty plain, forming a bizarre pattern that seemed to contain numerous mysteries. Bodies belonging to warriors of varying races and ferocious beasts lay scattered throughout the plain, leaning against the crumbling walls of ruined palaces or half-buried in the ground. All of them looked strange. Piled at the top of a tower of a specific palace, high up in the air, were 8 enormous heads. The eyes of these heads glared at the demon-sealing tombstone, shocking godly light emanating from them. "The heads of the god corpses!" Feng Iyo shouted. 8 headless god corpses had broken through the wards in the depths of the land of chaos's major oceans. Their missing heads sat at the top of that tower. The heads of the 8 god corpses resembled blazing suns that radiated blinding hot light. Dense power shot from the eyes of these heads, forming rays of light that shone on the demon-sealing tombstone. Illuminated by these rays, the demon-sealing tombstone gave off a terrifying, baleful presence. All of a sudden, Yi Hao saw the body of a man shrouded in pitch-black light. It lay there silently as he examined it, and he couldn't help but shout, "The progenitor! That's the body of the progenitor!" The voodoo insects of him and Huang Zhuli didn't bother waiting for orders, immediately flying into the air. The 8-winged centipede queen and the black crystal sky scorpion howled as they shot down into the desolate plain and toward the man's body. Gao Yu, having followed Jia Yu to one edge of the lake, also yelled out in shock. "The evil god?" Deep within the desolate plain, the body of a man clearly from another race rested in a half-crouched position. His body was around 100 meters tall, and his skin was bluish-brown. He also had a gigantic pair of wings on his back and curved horns on his head, and his body exuded a seemingly endless evil aura. "The sun-killing Bao. That's the arrow god!" Sanyi cried out, eyes shining with an intense light. He was looking at an Eastern barbarian with a relatively normal appearance. It was a man that, despite his mummified state, appeared to be about 50 years old. He silently sat in the middle of a ruined palace's round altar, holding a bow covered in complex patterns. "As expected," Luo Chun exclaimed, his eyes growing feverish. "This is the land of buried gods." The desolate plain at the bottom of the frozen lake stretched across a vast area, multiple rundown palaces protruding from its earth. The bodies of the voodoo progenitor, the evil god, and the arrow god, the ancestor of the Eastern barbarians, could be seen. In addition to that, the heads of the 8 god corpses were visible atop the tower, and the bodies of giants and skeletons of ancient beasts littered the area. This sight made the martial practitioners gathered around the lake become excited. They wanted to charge down immediately and gather all of these remains. Remains of the strongest existences of bygone eras were the most precious spirit materials in the world. They could be used to forge the strongest spirit artifacts, or one could directly absorb the potent power left within them. In the hands of certain people, particularly special remains in perfect condition could even be made into someone's second body. If Blood Fiend Sect or Black Voodoo Sect could obtain the remains of their respective progenitors and refine them, they would immediately become terrifyingly powerful weapons. Qin Lai, Du Xiangyang screamed. The excitement welling up inside of him made it difficult for him to control himself. Song Tingyu, Luo Chun, Pan Xianxian, Xie Jingxian, and Xue Moyan were excited as well, their hearts beating wildly. Just as the rumors claimed, the land of buried gods held the remains of the strongest beings from ancient times. This realization brought intense gazes to everyone's faces. San Yi and the Scarlet Barbarians, as well as Yi Hao, Huang Zhuli, Feng Yao, Yumen, and Su Yan, couldn't restrain themselves any longer. At this moment, they were already sliding down the sides of the frozen lake to the desolate plain. Luo Chun and the others looked at Qin Lai. They desperately wanted to rush down there too. "Wait!" Qin Lai shouted, shaking his head. Everyone stared at him in surprise. They had no idea what he was making them wait for. The demon-sealing tombstone is currently searching for the remainder of the 7 spirits, and the ice spirit has yet to show itself, Qin Lai said. The land of buried gods. It may have other strange elements we aren't aware of. Qin Lai's group looked down into the lake and realized that Di Fei, Ka Deng, and Ayu, all of whom had reached the lake before everyone else, were nowhere to be seen. Even Jia Yu had disappeared without a trace. Only the demon-sealing tombstone remained, floating high above the land of buried gods and absorbing power from the eyes of the 8 godheads. Visible waves of energy rippled between the eyes and the tombstone as it used all of its power to search for the 4 remaining spirits. Something in the land of buried gods seemed to prevent the demon-sealing tombstone from sensing the spirits. "Over there," Luo Chen cried. "Look at Black Voodoo Cult's 2 voodoo insects." The 8-winged centipede queen and the black crystal sky scorpion had flown to the desolate plain and now arrived at the body of the man that Yi Hao had called the voodoo progenitor. The 2 voodoo insects bared their sharp mandibles and bit into the body of the voodoo progenitor. They sought to consume the power that remained inside of it. Everyone watched them attentively. Suddenly, the 2 voodoo insects started to struggle furiously, flapping their wings in a desperate attempt to flee. A terrifying vacuum emanated from within the voodoo progenitor, aiming to suck them into it. The 8-winged centipede queen had bitten into the chest of the progenitor, and the black crystal sky scorpion had bitten into its neck. Both insects were sucked into the voodoo progenitor from these parts of the body. Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli had been descending toward the desolate plain, mad with joy and anticipation as they waited for their voodoo insects to transmit information to them. Yet, the moment the voodoo insects were sucked into the progenitor's body, extreme terror filled their eyes. The initially robust bodies of Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli quickly began to wither, their soul energy and blood visibly being drained from them. In 10 short seconds, their skin and flesh disappeared, reducing them to a pair of dried-out skeletons. They didn't even have the time to scream. After a brief moment, Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli became gray skeletons, their flesh and organs disappearing without a trace. They didn't even make a sound. The people nearest to them, Su Yan, Feng Yao, and Yu Men, were focused on the remains of the ancient warriors scattered throughout the desolate plain, so they didn't immediately notice what had happened to the 2. Crack! Their dried bones fell to the ground and disintegrated into dust. Only then did Su Yan notice what happened, and she unleashed a blood-curdling scream. Feng Yao and Yu Men heard her scream, and when they looked over at the 2 piles of bone dust, understanding suddenly washed over them. Terror immediately filled their eyes. They felt a chill run down their backs and swiftly spread through their body. All 3 of them trembled in horror, coming to a sudden stop where they were in the desolate plain. They refused to move even a centimeter more. This turn of events had frightened their souls out of them. Qin Lai and the others, having paid attention to the body of the voodoo progenitor this entire time, saw the voodoo insects get consumed and the dismal fates of Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli. They exchanged looks and saw the terror and anxiety in each other's eyes. Luo Chun and Du Xiangyang inhaled deeply and inwardly rejoiced. They rejoiced that they didn't immediately rush down into the land of buried gods. Ahem! Du Xiangyang licked his lips, his voice weak and hoarse. I think Qin Lai is right. Everyone nodded in agreement. Let's just watch for now and not enter recklessly, Su Tingyu said, shock on her face. Don't try to take the blood progenitor's body. Qin Lai. Nothing here is right. Shui Moyan continuously took deep breaths, trying to maintain her composure. The burning light of excitement in her eyes slowly died down. She was struggling to curb the greed within her. It'll be best for us to calm down first, Xianxia said in a relatively composed manner. Don't let the remains of those ancient warriors go to your heads. At that moment, the black barbarians that had been behind Feng Iyo and the others charged down the side of the frozen lake to the land of buried gods. How careless! San Yi snorted, his expression full of disdain. He had witnessed the terrible fate of Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli. They have no clue how bizarre the land of buried gods is. Jiang Tianxing laughed out loud. Gao Yu! San Yi suddenly shouted. Gao Yu had just slid down the icy wall that made up a part of the frozen lake's interior. He glanced at San Yi and Jiang Tianxing's group indifferently, nodded, then turned to travel toward the area the evil god was in. We need to be wary of him, Jiang Tianxing exclaimed grimly. I've never trusted him, San Yi said with a frown, his eyes cold. Good, Jiang Tianxing snickered. The same goes for you, San Yi added. Jiang Tianxing froze mid-smile. Up to this point, the Eastern barbarians were still the strongest, largest force in the land of buried gods. Although they had paid a significant price and lost half their number, more than 70 tribesmen surrounded San Yi. Most were black barbarians that were completely loyal to San Yi. With the deaths of Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli, black voodoo cult had been utterly wiped out. Only Su Yan of the Su family, Feng Iyo of Celestial Artifact Sect, and Yumen of 10,000 Beast Mountain still lived. They were only 3 people. They didn't have the demon-sealing tombstone or any powerful spirit arts. They weren't a threat. San Yi had nothing to fear from them. The ones that San Yi had to be concerned about were the people in Qin Lai's group. Despite the fact that few people were in his group, they had the demon-sealing tombstone and Blood Fiend Sect's terrifying weapon, the bloodthirsty dragon, on their side. Jiang Tianxing cultivated the blood spirit art and used to be a part of Blood Fiend Sect. To San Yi, he didn't deserve to be trusted. San Yi only believed in his tribesmen. You and your father brought news of the graveyard of gods to us, but neither of you are Eastern barbarians. San Yi wore a somber expression. I don't know how telling us Eastern barbarians about the graveyard of gods fits into your plans, but I know you are using us to achieve a certain goal. My only goal is the body of the blood progenitor, Jiang Tianxing replied, an awkward expression on his face. It's a pity that the bloodthirsty dragon took it from the land of buried gods. Achieving that goal now seems unlikely, so I hope to take other remains from here to make up for it. I hope that we can continue this friendly relationship since neither I nor you Eastern barbarians call the land of chaos home. San Yi snorted skeptically. As long as we find the remains of the 5 progenitors and the 3 emperors. Ah, the 5 great progenitors and the 3 great emperors. Light flashed in Jiang Tianxing's eyes. I also hope to find their remains, and by extension, their inheritances. Rumor has it that all of them were laid to rest here. I hope that's the case. San Yi took a deep breath and shouted, Everyone, stay with me as we enter, and advance slowly. The Eastern barbarians began moving forward from one end of the land of buried gods. Their first target was the ancestor of the Eastern barbarians, the arrow god. Feng Iyo, Yumen, and Su Yan won't dare to make any rash movements. The Eastern barbarians are moving toward the arrow god, and Gao Yu is heading to the evil god. Du Xiangyang narrowed his eyes as he peered downward from the edge of the frozen lake, taking note of what their enemies were doing. Qin Lai didn't make a sound. He simply watched the voodoo progenitor's body and the 2 voodoo insects inside of it. Yi Hao and Huang Zhuli had been connected to the voodoo insects by soul and blood. When the voodoo insects were sucked into the voodoo progenitor's body, it seemed to use that connection to drain the soul energy and blood from both black voodoo cult ringers. Qin Lai had noticed that the body of the voodoo progenitor, which was covered in writhing threads of black light, slowly radiated a nearly imperceptible life force. The voodoo progenitor's body, which had been lifeless for an interminable amount of time, resembled an ancient tree growing a tender green branch. Felt extremely strange. Xianxia gasped. The voodoo progenitor's body is showing signs of life, she exclaimed. Xianxia was extremely sensitive to life fluctuations. She detected the mysterious changes occurring within the body of the voodoo progenitor as well. The moment she finished speaking, everyone turned their attention to the voodoo progenitor. The voodoo insects are drinking the blood of the voodoo progenitor. Shui wore an expression of disbelief. All of the group focused on the body, and as expected, the 8-winged centipede queen and the black crystal sky scorpion were feeding off of the remaining droplets of blood inside of it. The auras of Yi Yihao's and Huang Zhuli's souls could be sensed from the bodies of both voodoo insects. This shrouded the voodoo progenitor's body with multiple soul auras, making anyone who sensed it feel uncomfortable. It just doesn't feel right, Du Xiangyang said, shaking his head. A strange anxiety weighed upon his mind. A-oh, you. In the sky above the land of buried gods, the bloodthirsty dragon wailed mournfully once again. Blood Fiend Sec's ultimate treasure dove toward Qin Lai and Shui Moyan, long streams of blood trailing behind it. The blood progenitor's body sat atop its skull, bloody light flashing from it as if it were a sanguine sun. Dense, fiendish blood energy seemed to well from either the blood progenitor's body or the bloody bone dragon. It resembled a sea of blood that threatened to swallow people up and drown them. Take the blood progenitor. Pan Xianxian screamed in surprise. Terror suddenly filled Qin Lai's and Shui Moyan's faces. Were it not for the bizarre changes occurring in the voodoo progenitor's body or the terrible deaths of Yi Hao and Huang Zhulai, Qin Lai and Shui Moyan might have welcomed the body of the blood progenitor with open arms. With that cruel precedent having been set right in front of them, Qin Lai and Shui Moyan felt nothing but fright. When they saw the bloody bone dragon carrying the blood progenitor's body toward them, they considered fleeing. Ba-dump be a dump. Ba-dump be a dump be a dump. The heartbeats of Luo Chen and the others suddenly became uncontrollably fast like the deep thumping of a drum. Their blood began boiling, their faces flushed bright red, and they felt as if their bodies were about to explode. Everyone went pale with shock. I feel like I'm going to blow up, Du Xiangyang howled. What's going on? Luo Chen shouted. Bloody light radiated from Qin Lai and Shui Moyan. Their eyes became a deep scarlet, almost as if blood were about to gush from them. From their perspective, a sea of blood appeared right in front of them. Sanguine fluid dripped from the enormous dragon at the center of that sea, which growled as if it wanted to devour them and take over their souls. Whether it was Shui Moyan who used it first or Qin Lai who used it afterward, neither of them had actually been acknowledged by the bloodthirsty dragon. They hadn't tamed this violent heaven-grade spirit artifact. The only person it would acknowledge as master was the blood progenitor. The blood progenitor created the bloodthirsty dragon, tempered it with his own blood, and refined it using countless spirit materials. To the bloodthirsty dragon, he was its true master. No one could take the place of the blood progenitor in its heart. Today, the bloodthirsty dragon found out that the blood progenitor's soul had perished, leaving only the man's body. It could smell its master's familiar scent, but it could no longer feel his summons. Yet it refused to accept that as reality. Instead, it decided that it would use the souls of these two juniors who cultivated his master's spirit art along with their tempered blood to gather its master's fragmented thoughts. If some of its master's consciousness still remained, the bloodthirsty dragon would awaken it. In the bloodthirsty dragon's heart, its master was the only one who was qualified enough to control it, and in doing so, reclaim their former glory. To that end, it desired the true souls of Qin Lai and Shui Moyan. A seemingly endless amount of fiendish blood energy condensed to form a viscous sea of blood. The bloodthirsty dragon carried its master's body on its skull, roaring amidst this bloody sea thick with the smell of iron as it turned to devour Qin Lai and Shui Moyan. A terrifying, fiendish aura covered the sky and the earth, enveloping Qin Lai's group. It locked down the area, keeping them completely confined. Every single one of them could only watch as the bloody sea flooded toward them. They couldn't escape this area. Even thoughts of resisting were thoroughly shattered by the impact of the fiendish blood aura. Before anyone could realize it, the bloodthirsty dragon's blood energy permeated their blood vessels and spread across their bodies. Its violent soul had dominated their minds. They were helpless. Ba-dump be a dump. Ba-dump be a dump be a dump. The dull, intense throbbing of a heartbeat constantly resounded like the rumbling of thunder. Everyone's faces and skin flushed red as blood slowly dripped from their eyes. The speed at which their blood flowed within their bodies became 10 times faster than before. This sudden increase in speed made them lose all control over themselves. In the face of the bloody bone dragon's terrible pressure, despair reigned over them. As much as they racked their brains trying to think up countermeasures, they couldn't think of any. Having consumed a huge amount of the fiendish blood aura within the demon-sealing tombstone, then later finding the blood progenitor's body, the bloodthirsty dragon emanated an invincible, sky-changing, earth-rending power. Who could possibly compete against it? Grim expressions dominated the faces of Qianlai's group, all of them losing control of their tempers. All they could do was wait to receive the order that was about to arrive. The order to burst into pieces and die. Qianlai's demeanor seemed especially grim. He stood at the very front of the group. His had experienced the bloody bone dragon's terrible, earth-shaking aura, which had flooded everyone's minds, restrained their souls, and effectively enveloped this entire area. The color of blood had long since filled his mind consciousness. Countless bloody lights even penetrated and flooded his soul lake. Before Qianlai knew it, a thread of the bloodthirsty dragon's soul consciousness had seeped into his mind and polluted his soul lake. His soul consciousness became a bloody red, and his soul lake changed into a lake of blood. Even his true soul was slowly being corrupted, bit by bit. His true soul had been repeatedly tempered by the power of thunder, a power that could eliminate all traces of evil souls. In spite of that, it paled before this bloody corruption and was powerless. It seemed as if the power of thunder couldn't eliminate the blood energy that invaded his soul consciousness. Qianlai's heart became heavy as blood energy gradually filled his soul, making him feel as if he were slowly sinking toward an endless sea of blood. He was well aware of how the bloodthirsty dragon's blood energy was dominating his mind and soul, corrupting him. He would ultimately lose all sense of himself and succumb, becoming the bloody bone dragon's puppet. He would no longer have his own thoughts, his own consciousness. He would suffer a fate even worse than death. And he slowly gave in. Whoosh! At that moment, a powerful suction force, one which he himself wasn't sure existed, suddenly appeared in the space between his brows. The two people closest to him, Xue Moyan and Song Tingyu, could clearly see that a ray of pitch-black light had appeared there. In the next moment, a whirlpool that resembled a black hole appeared there, consuming the seemingly endless amount of blood energy that surrounded them. Xue Moyan instantly discovered that the blood energy that had spread into her soul consciousness rapidly decreased, as if it were some sort of paint being drained from her mind. Like Qianlai's soul consciousness, hers had been flooded with blood energy. Her consciousness had initially been blurry, leaving her powerless to resist. She had gradually given in to the despair. Yet, when that pitch-black light shone from between Qianlai's eyebrows, everything underwent an astonishing change. Her blood-polluted soul consciousness quickly returned to normal. The bloody haze in her mind scattered as if a strong wind had blown through, freeing her frozen thoughts and cleansing her blood-polluted soul. In this way, her consciousness became clear once more. Even the dense, fiendish blood aura that had invaded her body was quickly extracted. Xue Moyan was dumbstruck. She could see wisps of bloody smoke entering the black dot between Qianlai's eyebrows. That black dot was a deep, far-seeing eye. It was the soul-suppressing orb. Boom! Qianlai's mind shook, and he instantly broke free of his powerless state from earlier. The blood that had dyed his soul consciousness had been entirely extracted, and the moment the last of it vanished, he regained his wits. Upon focusing his attention and checking his surroundings, he saw countless bloody lights being absorbed into the soul-suppressing orb and pulled into the vast space inside of it. His third eye, the soul-suppressing orb, unleashed an absolute suppressive force capable of subduing all violent spirits and making them yield. Whoosh! A terrifying suction force erupted from the soul-suppressing orb. The seemingly endless, turbulent sea of blood, the bloodthirsty dragon fiendishly roaring within it, and the blood progenitor's body sitting on its skull. All of them transformed into rays of bloody light that Qianlai's third eye devoured. And they completely disappeared. Only the soul-suppressing orb between Qianlai's eyebrows remained. It shone with dazzling light, traces of bloody rays swimming within it. Song Tingyu, Xuemoyan, Du Xiangyang, Luochun, Xie Jingxian, and Pan Qianqian froze where they stood. To them, what had just happened seemed like the unlikeliest dream. It was as if everything that had just occurred, the crazed, howling, bloodthirsty dragon, the blood progenitor's body atop its skull, and the terrible aura that shook the earth and blotted out the sky, were just an illusion. All because they suddenly disappeared in a bizarre, untraceable way. As a result, everyone felt astonished and confused. They suspected that the bloodthirsty dragon's soul consciousness had created an illusion that tampered with their memories. However, if everything that had just taken place weren't an illusion and was actually real, why would Qianlai possess a third eye? And why was that third eye capable of devouring blood fiend sect's ultimate treasure, the sea of blood, and the blood progenitor's body? Just now, Du Xiangyang's voice was hoarse. He looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't know where to start. Was all of that real? Pan Qianqian asked timidly, giving voice to what everyone was thinking. I think that everything we saw just now was real. None of it was an illusion, Xuemoyan said, gripping the illusory demon orb. Her eyes shone clearly with a strange, bright light. At the very least, the illusory demon orb tells me there weren't any. This news startled the rest of the group. Then everyone's eyes simultaneously fell upon Qianlai. Under everyone's gazes, Qianlai's third eye slowly withdrew into his forehead. The soul-suppressing orb almost instantly vanished into his flesh once more. Qianlai had regained his normal appearance. In the eyes of the rest of the group, however, Qianlai was obviously different from them. Big brother Qin, you're not a member of a foreign race, are you? Pan Qianqian spoke up again. What in spirit realm was that eye? It's not an eye, Qianlai exclaimed. It's a spirit artifact as powerful as the bloodthirsty dragon. A spirit artifact? One that could devour a heaven-grade spirit artifact like the bloodthirsty dragon? This revelation stunned everyone into silence for a second time. Don't ask. Qianlai sighed. Even I'm not entirely sure what it is. It's occupied the space between my brows for as long as I could remember, but I don't know where it came from or what it's capable of. Do you feel any different now? Song Tingyu asked worriedly. Has anything changed after that spirit artifact devoured the bloodthirsty dragon, absorbed that sea of blood, and took in the blood progenitor's body? I have yet to sense anything, Qianlai said. His words shocked everyone. Swoosh! As Qianlai's group was repeatedly being astonished, the demon-sealing tombstone, which had been hovering above the land of buried gods, whistled through the air at a surprisingly fast speed. It arrived above Qianlai's head, floating in the air and letting out rays of prismatic divine light, as if it were searching for something. It seemed to have been attracted here by the aura of the soul-suppressing orb. Unfortunately for the demon-sealing tombstone, the soul-suppressing orb hadn't taken much time at all to devour the bloodthirsty dragon and everything that accompanied it. The demon-sealing tombstone had detected the soul-suppressing orb's aura, but by the time it rushed over to Qianlai's group from its position above the land of buried gods, the orb had already vanished into the space between Qianlai's eyebrows. Look, it's Di Fei, Du Xiangyang suddenly shouted. Di Fei has appeared. Di Fei, who had vanished earlier, currently sat atop the head of an ancient giant that lay flat on the ground of the land of buried gods. The earth spirit's set of eyes above his own exuded the immense power of earth. RRRRMB. This ancient 100-meter-tall giant, which resembled a small hill from its prone position, suddenly sat up. Revolving yellow rings of potent earthly energy appeared around the giant's body. It opened its gruesome maw and unleashed an inaudible roar, suddenly standing up with Defei still seated atop its head. Driven by the power of the Earth Spirit, this giant was the first corpse in the land of buried gods to stand. That ancient giant's body contains an immense, refined power of Earth, Luo Chen cried in surprise. It's like its body were made with soil, as if it were born into this world from the earth itself. The second it detected the strange events occurring in the land of buried gods, the demon-sealing tombstone that had been hovering above Qin Lai's head flew away once again. The demon-sealing tombstone shot through the air, seemingly in a hurry to suppress the earth spirit along with the earthen body of the ancient giant that stood up in the desolate plain. It seemed as though the tombstone was trying to prevent an earth-shaking calamity from happening. After a moment of contemplation, Du Xiangyang spoke up. I understand now, he said. Some of the ancient elites buried here cultivated one power, and one power alone. For the seven spirits, all of these elites are powerful puppets at their disposal. The other two Eastern barbarians, that Ka Deng and that Ayu, probably have spirits within them as well, Song Tingyu added, having understood the situation as well. The sharp power of metal and gentle power of water inside of those elites could temporarily prevent the demon-sealing tombstone from discovering them if they to possess their corpses. And things happened exactly as she said. The moment Song Tingyu and Du Xiangyang finished speaking, abnormal changes occurred in the bodies of two other ancient elites in the land of buried gods. One was a giant, 200-meter-tall ape. It seemed to have been forged from gold and steel because its body was completely golden yellow. Every hair on its body resembled a golden needle that glittered with a sharp, metallic light. Like the ancient giant, this giant ape was a beast of a bygone era. Both were members of the giant spirit race. However, this giant golden ape was significantly stronger than the members of the giant spirit race that had escaped their seals in the freezing land beneath the Arctic mountain range. Even in death, the violent power of metal that emanated from the giant ape's body seemed sharp enough to pierce the sky. This ancient giant ape clearly must have been far stronger than Mang Wang when it was alive and in peak condition. Along with the ancient giant and the ape, the enormous dragon that the blood progenitor used to create the bloodthirsty dragon was a member of the giant spirit race. During ancient times, the giant spirit race was one of the most powerful races. They were capable of causing chaos that changed the color of the sky itself. In terms of purely physical, explosive strength and potential to wreak havoc upon all living beings in the world, the giant spirit race had always been considered the best amongst all the powerful races. FSH. The melodious sound of murmuring streams came from a graceful woman with the tail of a fish in place of her lower body. This woman was a member of the merfolk, a foreign sea race. She was nearly 5 meters tall and had been dead for many years. Ayu of the black barbarian tribe currently lay on the ground beside that woman. She didn't seem to be breathing or showing any other signs of life. The water spirit had abandoned her and instead taken over the body of this merfolk elite who had been dead for many years, using it as its new puppet. Ayu had fallen, and this sea race elite stood, her body releasing the harmonic sound of hundreds of murmuring streams flowing at the same time. The earth, metal, and water spirits, which had taken over Defei's, Ka Deng's, and Ayu's bodies, now possessed the corpses of ancient elites and made them stand once more. The ancient giant golden ape, and merfolk woman radiated potent auras of earth, metal, and water. They glared at the blue sky above them and opened their mouths, soundlessly roaring. Boom, boom, boom. The land of buried gods resonated with a series of tremors. Fissures opened up in the ground as numerous rundown palaces collapsed or burst apart. Sharp golden beams emanated from the giant ape's body, shooting into the sky like a fiery beacon. These beams resembled giant golden swords that pierced into and nearly shattered the mystical fabric that made up the graveyard of gods, creating an enormous hole. The sound of flowing water echoed from inside the body of the graceful merfolk woman as she suddenly began to chant in a soft tone. Extremely far from the forbidden land of ice, countless streams of water shot from the sea of the forbidden land of water several hundred kilometers into the air. The earth, metal, and water spirits unleashed all of their amazing powers, seeking to turn the land of buried gods upside down and tear the graveyard of gods apart. Only the ice spirit possessing Xianxia had yet to take action. No one knew where it was hiding. This shocking commotion made the eastern barbarians, who had arrived beside the body of the arrow god, and Gaoyu, who had arrived next to the evil god's body, stop what they were doing. Off in the periphery of the desolate plain, Feng Iyo, Yu Men, and Su Yen calmly watched the situation unfold. All of them were looking at the demon-sealing tombstone. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Godly chains of light spread from the surface of the demon-sealing tombstone, stretching across tens of thousands of meters like strings of glittering crystals. They resembled a rainbow that connected the heavens to the earth. The 7 divine lights of the demon-sealing tombstone swept down from the heavens like a whip in the hands of an ancient god. They collectively released a shrill whistling noise and struck the ancient giant ape, and the merfolk woman. Prack, prack, prack. Sparks appeared on the bodies of the ancient elites possessed by the earth, metal, and water spirits. The overwhelming auras of the 3 bodies became significantly weaker upon being struck by the godly whip. Everyone fearfully watched the situation develop. The destructive auras of the demon-sealing tombstone and the 3 ancient elites intimidated them, so no one dared to act recklessly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A wave of light rippled outward like a tide in the ocean as the demon-sealing tombstone fought the 3 spirits. These were terrifying waves of tremendous, refined energy. Defend against it with everything you have, Zenyi roared. Every Eastern barbarian summoned their spirit energies at the same time. The shields of light that protected each of them instantly lit up, dazzling the battlefield. All of them were able to live up to this point because their realms were strong and their spirit energies were refined. When the shields of light brightly came to life, the Eastern barbarians prepared to defend themselves with all of their might, their teeth clenched. It seemed as if they had transformed into a thick wall of light. Their plan was to work together and create a single shield of light, one they would use to resist the residual shock wave hurtling toward them. However, their resistance was like a praying mantis attempting to stop a wooden cart. Couldn't even withstand a single blow. Croc, croc, croc. Bang! The instant the shock wave of energy struck the Eastern barbarians, one prismatic shield of light shattered after another. They were as fragile as chicken eggs. Shields of light exploded, and the Eastern barbarians hiding inside each of them broke like the yolk of an egg. They were instantly reduced to pulp. Aside from Senyi, Yanmin, Jiang Tianxing, and a few others who cultivated bizarre spirit arts or possessed extremely sturdy bodies, all of the other Eastern barbarians died in droves. Yuo! Clusters of ghosts surrounded Gaoyu as the residual shock wave struck him. He seemed like a god commanding the vile souls of the underworld. He unleashed dark, shrill howls, making the vile souls and ghosts around him go into a frenzy. The instant the energy waves struck him, he released an astounding amount of evil energy that pushed against them and nullified their terrifying force. Gaoyu panted heavily, his face a pale white. He could be considered to have barely escaped death. On the outer edge of the desolate plain, the ring-shaped shockwave spread outward to strike Su Yen, Feng Iyo, and Yu Men. 5 out of the 10 spatial rings that celestial artifact sex Feng Iyo wore on his fingers sparkled with strange lights. A spirit artifact flew out of each one. A shield of flame, a precious set of black-scaled armor, an icy blue flag with a phoenix embroidered into it, a thick signboard, and a cold emerald. These 5 spirit artifacts were defensive in nature, moving to form a line in front of Feng Iyo. They exploded one after another, ultimately preserving his life. At the same time, 10,000 Beast Mountains Yu Men instantly took on the form of a beast. The necklace of teeth around his neck released a cold white bony light and condensed into a firm barrier. In this way, he also avoided danger. The Su family's Su Yen, however, wasn't as lucky as they were. She didn't have as many spirit artifacts as Feng Iyo, nor did she have a tough body like Yu Men. Once the 3 profound grade spirit artifacts she did have exploded, her shield of light subsequently shattered like glass. And her body followed suit, breaking apart as well. The terrifying energy shock wave caused by the clash between the demon-sealing tombstone and the three spirits spread in every direction and slaughtered more than half of the people that had rushed into the land of buried gods. Qianlai's group looked down at the desolate plain once more and discovered that only a dozen or so people remained. Most of the eastern barbarians had instantly shattered to pieces in the face of the shock wave. The wave of energy that rampaged through the land of buried gods killed swathes of eastern barbarians, as well as Su Yen, and passed over the countless remains of ancient elites. However, no new marks could be seen on the remains of those elites. The shock wave hadn't even so much as moved them. They truly are the bodies of ancient elites, Du Xiangyang cried out in praise. Even after being dead for tens of thousands of years, enduring the ravages of time, they still weren't affected by the residual shock wave caused by the clash between the demon-sealing tombstone and the three spirits. He and the rest of Qianlai's group still stood at the edge of the frozen lake. They hadn't dared to recklessly enter the land of buried gods, which was why the shock wave that swept through the desolate plain below hadn't affected them at all. I think it would be better for us to keep watching, Song Tingyu said bitterly. The shocking turn of events down in the land of buried gods made them even less likely to be rash. San Yi and Gao Yu are trying to take the bodies of the arrow god and the evil god, Xie Jingxian exclaimed softly. The energy shock wave had just rampaged across the desolate plain of the land of buried gods. The demon-sealing tombstone and the three spirits had yet to create another shock wave with a new round of combat. This was the best and probably only opportunity for those who had survived the shock wave. No one dared to hesitate. San Yi was the first to act. The black barbarian climbed up to the ruined palace where the arrow god's body was, arriving alone at the round altar where the body sat. He fell to his knees and shuffled over to the altar. Then he kowtowed with incredible devotion, using his soul to unleash his reverence and respect. He even muttered words under his breath. Eastern barbarian disciple San Yi hereby kowtows and invites our progenitor to return to his homeland. San Yi held an enormous arrow with scarlet feather fletching in his arms, kowtowing every time he moved forward with his knees. Mysterious patterns shaped like a golden three-legged bird were engraved into that arrow. It radiated fiery light and exuded an ancient, mysterious feeling. As he held the scarlet feather arrow and moved forward on his knees, San Yi kept a close eye on the bow that lay on the round altar. Every time he kowtowed then got back up, he stared at it. The bow that lay there was the sun-killing bow. San Yi expressed his devotion by kowtowing, worshipping with his very soul. Using the scarlet feather arrow, an ancient Eastern barbarian treasure, as a medium for his reverence, he slowly made his way to the arrow god. Whoosh! All of a sudden, the sun-killing bow sensed the aura of the scarlet feather arrow, slowly floating into the air and arriving before San Yi like a spirit bird. San Yi was overcome with joy, eyes aglow with the light of passion. He hastily bit his finger and dripped blood onto the sun-killing bow. ZZT. The moment his blood splashed against the sun-killing bow, it burst into scarlet flames. A wondrous ripple of energy connected San Yi to the sun-killing bow and the arrow god's body. An instant later, both the bow and the body flew into the fiery ring on San Ye's finger at the same time. Frenzied glee gushed from San Ye's eyes. He immediately leaped from the round altar and yelled, "We will retreat from the land of buried gods for now." He had already achieved his goal. In the meantime, Gao Yu also took action. Clusters of souls floated around him, his ring radiating eerie, evil energy as he walked toward the evil god's giant body. When he arrived at the evil god's body, a myriad of ancient nether realm runes flew from Gao Yu's eyes amidst noises that resembled the cries of wronged souls. The runes transformed into sinister, ghastly faces and streamed into the evil god's chest where its heart would be. Ba-dump! Shockingly enough, a powerful heartbeat resounded from the evil god's heart. Whoosh! A pitch-black ray of light shot from the ebon heart of the evil god, descending upon Gao Yu's head. Then the 100-meter-tall body of the evil god actually traveled along that ray of light, gradually shrinking as it moved toward Gao Yu. A dozen or so seconds later, the evil god had entirely vanished into Gao Yu's body. San Yi had welcomed the sun-killing Bao and the arrow god's body into his possession, whereas Gao Yu had drawn the evil god's body into himself. Upon achieving their goals, both men started evacuating from the land of buried gods as fast as they could. "Go!" San Yi shouted. "Return to the edge of the frozen lake first." At his command, the dozen or so Eastern barbarians that had been lucky enough to survive the shock wave from earlier immediately turned around and ran back the way they came. Having taken the evil god's body into his own, Gao Yu didn't hesitate to promptly leave the land of buried gods as well. Jiang Tianxing was the only one who remained. In the periphery of the desolate plain that made up the land of buried gods, since celestial artifact sects Feng Eo and 10,000 Beast Mountains Yu men managed to survive the shock wave, they now had the chance to obtain the remains of an ancient elite. Unfortunately for them, they didn't seem to be able to retrieve any. Seeing that even San Yi and Gao Yu didn't dare to be greedy, retreating as soon as they obtained the bodies of the arrow god and the evil god instead of trying to obtain more remains, Feng Eo and Yu men forcefully suppressed their own greed. After a brief moment of hesitation, they turned and retreated as well. They had no choice but to retreat, because the demon-sealing tombstone and the three spirits had clashed once again, creating a second massive shock wave that was about to spread in their direction. As a result, Jiang Tianxing was the only one left standing in the land of buried gods. Jiang Tianxing refused to accept this outcome. Not many people knew about it, but he and his father were the first ones to learn of the location and mysteries of the Graveyard of Gods. Both had meticulously planned for the Graveyard of Gods, as well as the remains of the blood progenitor and many other ancient elites. Unfortunately, the most crucial part of their plans, the demon-sealing tombstone, had accidentally been taken by Qin Lai. Without it, the greatest flaw in Jiang Tianxing and Jiang Zhuzhe's plan to dominate the Graveyard of Gods lay exposed. The strength of the earth, metal, and water spirits, as well as the ice spirit's cunning, had greatly exceeded his expectations. They made some of his contingency plans feel hollow and useless. Both San Yi and Gao Yu had managed to achieve their goals. He, however, was still empty-handed. How could Jiang Tianxing possibly accept this? "Heya ag, half?" Jiang Tianxing heaved harsh, nasal gasps, as if a wild demon that had been imprisoned within him for so long had finally been released. Rays of intimidating bloody light shot from his eyes, making him appear utterly terrifying. All of the Eastern barbarians that had exploded and died as a result of the previous shockwave, leaving bloody pulp on the ground, were currently flowing toward Jiang Tianxing in an eerie fashion. From a high vantage point, the blood flowing across the ground looked like numerous bloody snakes. They writhed and squirmed, forming a bizarre, bloody pattern. Using the true soul as the medium and blood as the fount of power, shock filled Shui Moyan's voice as these words escaped her mouth. He's forming a blood demon." A serious expression surfaced on Qin Lai's face. The blood demon art Jiang Tianxing had executed was slightly different from the one he knew of. The blood demon art recorded inside of the blood codex allowed a martial practitioner to use the power of their own soul to gather the blood from a fresh corpse and bestow it with blood energy, giving it strength. This would make a blood demon rise from the gathered pool of blood, one that the user of the spirit art would then be able to control. When Jiang Tianxing had executed the blood demon art, his hands hung at his sides, blood continuously flowing from the tips of his fingers. Drip, drip, drip. Jiang Tianxing's blood exuded a pungent, iron stench as it dripped into the pool at his feet. The blood of that pool looked as if it fueled intense flames that instantly became violent and crazy. The snake-like streams of blood in the surroundings slithered over, also going crazy. They quickly gathered in the pool at Jiang Tianxing's feet and underwent a grotesque change. Soon enough, a fiendish blood demon that was around 10 meters tall rose from the pool of blood. It unleashed a bloodthirsty roar, emanating an insane aura similar to Jiang Tianxing's. On the other hand, Jiang Tianxing's face was pale as his condition rapidly worsened, yet his eyes continued to shine with excitement and madness, the same kind of light that shone from the eyes of the blood demon. Whoosh! The blood demon opened its sanguine maw and swallowed Jiang Tianxing in a single gulp. Hai instantly vanished into the blood demon's body. The light in the eyes of the blood demon became creepier and more frightening every moment after it swallowed Jiang Tianxing. Its entire body radiated a terrifying aura that struck fear into people's hearts. The blood demon art gathers the blood of the dead and mingles it with soul fragments in their bodies that have yet to completely dissipate. Although blood demons created this way don't exist very long, they possess terrifying amounts of strength that can temporarily be used to achieve its controller's goals, Shui Moyan said, her words tinged with shock. The blood demon Jiang Tianxing created isn't quite like the ones that I know of. He seems to have formed a close connection between his soul and the blood demon in order to unleash the power of his soul and blood. She took a deep breath. It looks like he's temporarily merged with the blood demon. If that is truly the case, then Jiang Tianxing has become the blood demon, and the blood demon has become Jiang Tianxing. This way, he'll be able to keep the blood demon around longer. However, once the spirit art runs its course, he'll be reduced to a weakened state for an extremely long period of time as well. The blood demon may even devour him instead. Such an outcome is a huge flaw in this altered blood demon art, where the blood demon continues to exist after the user's body has perished. Awoo! The blood demon looked into the sky and howled angrily. New shock waves of energy spread from the battle between the demon-sealing tombstone and the three spirits. However, when they reached the blood demon, its immense murderous blood aura pushed them aside. By forming this blood demon using unconventional methods, Jiang Tianxing actually managed to forcefully stay in the land of buried gods instead of retreating at the sight of the shockwaves like Sen Yu and his barbarians Gao Yu, Feng Yio, and Yu Men. However, in order to remain in the land of buried gods, Jiang Tianxing forfeited his rationality and fell into a frenzied state. He was no longer sane enough to think about taking the remains of the ancient elites. Qin Lai suddenly trembled in realization. Absorbing blood is instinct to a blood demon, he yelled. Jiang Tianxing created the blood demon in a way that it would instinctively drink as much blood as it wanted. It'll start sucking the remaining blood from the nearest body of an ancient elite. The moment he said this, everyone's faces filled with shock and terror. It's going to drink the remaining blood inside the bodies of the ancient elites? Pan Qianqian's eyes opened wide with fear. All of these ancient elites were existences that once dominated the world. If any blood remains in their bodies, it would definitely contain tremendous amounts of energy. Here, at the bottom of the frozen lake, the land of buried gods has kept these bodies from decaying. Understanding flashed across Du Xiangyang's face. Their strength and even their refined energy may have been completely preserved. This could also mean that every single body of every single elite may still have blood inside of them. What will happen if the blood demon that Jiang Tianxing created drinks all of that blood? Luo Chen asked. Only God knows the answer to that question, Shui Moyan exclaimed, a worried look in her eyes. If that happened, Jiang Tianxing may never awaken, and an extremely ravenous blood demon seeking to drain the blood from every living thing could be born into this world. Such a blood demon would ultimately tear its way out of the graveyard of gods and charge into the land of chaos. Qin Lai said grimly, that could spell the end of the land of chaos. Shui Moyan smiled bitterly. In that moment, everyone realized that, if they allowed the demonified Jiang Tianxing to continuously absorb the blood of the ancient elite corpses in the land of buried gods, it could grow into a never-ending evil capable of bathing the world sanguine. Not only would it entirely consume Jiang Tianxing, it might even flood the 9 great silver rank forces and any other living thing in the land of chaos with a sea of blood. Qin Lai, an indifferent voice suddenly rang out. Can you help me find Jiayu? Gao Yu appeared out of nowhere like a lone ghost, standing 20 meters away from Qin Lai. He didn't take a single step closer. The ice spirit corrupted Jiayu and dominated her soul. I hope that you will be able to help me expel the ice spirit from her body and get her back, if possible. Gao Yu didn't say anything more. He just watched Qin Lai silently. I currently don't have any idea how to go about doing that, Qin Lai said. After a moment of thought, he asked, how much do you know about the land of buried gods? The Jiang father and son pair brought news of the graveyard of gods to the eastern barbarians. Gao Yu answered nonchalantly. According to my knowledge, when Blood Fiend sect perished thousands of years ago, and those who cultivated using human blood were being hunted down, Xianxia and a group of trusted aides escaped to the Eastern barbarians. Jiang Tianxing was born of his father's union with a scarlet barbarian woman. Since the blood of the scarlet barbarian tribe flows through him, the scarlet barbarians consider him half-scarlet barbarian. When the hunt for Blood Fiend sect in the land of chaos died down, and was no longer carried out with such fervor, Xianxia took Jiang Tianxing back westward, and they hid amongst celestial artifact sect. Both of them know the secrets of the graveyard of gods and the land of buried gods better than anyone. Xianxia was the one who told the Eastern barbarians to get Thunderblitz wood in preparation for dealing with the Thunder Spirit. He also told them about the pure soul springs hidden inside of the Thunder Lagoon. He also revealed the fact that both the ancestor and the ultimate treasure of the Eastern barbarians, the arrow god and the sun-killing bow, were in the land of buried gods. For this information alone, the Eastern barbarians could not reject Xianxia's proposal. Not to mention the fact that the Jiang father-son duo had even told them about the trial and how elites of the 9 great silver rank forces would be dispatched to the graveyard of gods as a result. In order for them to obtain their ultimate treasure and the remains of their ancestor, to eliminate future leaders of the land of chaos, to obtain the pure soul springs and the remains of ancient elites, the Eastern barbarians gathered hundreds of tribesmen in the Nether Passage realm and had them enter the graveyard of gods through different spatial passageways. Jiang Tianxing knew more about the graveyard of gods than anyone else in here. Every step he took probably corresponded with a plan that was already in place. One piece of information after another, Gao Yu explained everything about Jiang Tianxing that Jia Yu had told him. This information shocked Qin Lai and the others beyond belief. They never would have imagined that the first ones to solve the mysteries of the graveyard of gods would be the Jiang father-son pair. They hadn't expected them to be the driving force behind the entrance of the Eastern barbarians. It seemed as though Xianxia, the culprit of the catastrophe that turned the land of chaos upside down 1,000 years ago, driving Blood Fiend sect to its destruction, was the terrible scourge behind everything in the graveyard of gods. Xianxia is extremely terrifying, Gao Yu added. According to Jia Yu, many elders of the Eastern barbarian tribes respect him and trust him quite a bit. The Eastern barbarians believe he may be the key to invading and sweeping through the land of chaos. This man vanished for more than 1,000 years and has probably been cultivating with human blood in secret. His strength has probably reached the pinnacle of strength in the land of chaos, Qin Lai said, a serious expression on his face. If he manages to obtain the blood progenitor's body, seize the bloodthirsty dragon, and plunder all of the remains of these ancient elites, he may turn the land of chaos on its head once more. In his eyes, Xue Li's junior brother, Xianxia, had just become the land of chaos's most terrifying enemy. While Gao Yu had been speaking, the demonified Jiang Tianxing began moving toward the nearest body of an ancient elite. It was the body of a person of the wood race. This person was about 2.5 meters tall. This person's body resembled the trunk of a tree, had skin as brown as wood and as wrinkled as bark. His long, dark green hair looked like the foliage of a willow tree. This wood race clansman had been dead for years. Its body didn't bear any traces of a soul aura. It did, however, resemble the branches of an ancient tree that contained abundant life energy. An extremely refined life energy at that. Up above, at the edge of the frozen lake, Xie Jingxian and Xue Moyan were watching Jiang Tianxing closely. When they saw him approach that particular body, light flashed through their eyes at the same time. Both of them were especially interested in the body of this wood race clansman. They were both aware of the fact that it held tremendous amounts of life energy, which was extremely beneficial to them. Xue Jingxian could use its life energy to enhance her own strength and bring the inheritance she received from the wood race to even greater heights. Xue Moyan, on the other hand, could extract the life energy from this wood race clansman's body and use it to help her mother awaken and recover. In order to obtain the remains of these ancient elites, one must first obtain their acknowledgement. Gao Yu spoke up once more. You can't just grab them recklessly. Every time an elite perishes, their juniors, relative, and comrades would bring them here. They would then apply a unique mark to these bodies to keep other people from abusing them and prevent any accidents. San Yi was able to collect the body of the arrow god and the sun-killing bow because he brought an ancient Eastern barbarian treasure with him. That scarlet feather arrow was a part of the sun-killing bow to begin with, and it contained an aura that the mark on the arrow god's body acknowledged. That's the reason why San Yi succeeded. As for me, I already obtained the acknowledgement of a soul fragment of the evil god at the demon god mountain range prior to entering the graveyard of the gods. Gao Yu looked at Xianxia, then indifferently said, "Your aura is slightly similar to that of the body of the wood race elite down there. You may be able to acquire it." He looked at Shui Moyan and shook his head. "You would probably fail." "How about him?" Xianxia and Shui Moyan asked in unison. They were referring to Jiang Tianxing. Right now, the demonified Jiang Tianxing had already arrived beside the body of that wood race elite. Since blood demons were created from blood, their appearances were normally indistinct and blurry. This blood demon, however, was different. It bore a great resemblance to Jiang Tianxing. It suddenly looked at the body of the wood race elite with its bright red eyes. "Him? He knows more about the graveyard of gods than anyone here," Gao Yu answered. The blood demon opened its mouth and took a deep, lengthy breath. Swoosh! As a result of the blood demon's actions, the rich life energy within the wood race clansman's body transformed into multiple streams of emerald liquid. These streams flew from the body, mixed with blood energy and refined spirit energy, and actually shot right into the demon's bloody maw. Bang! The body of the wood race clansman, which had been brimming with life energy, rotted as all of its essences were extracted from it. When a gust of frigid wind blew across it a few moments later, the rotted corpse crumbled to dust and spread into the air. Without the protection of the refined spirit energy, it turned to dust as if thousands of years had gone by in an instant. On the other hand, the body of the demonified Jiang Tianxing, which already surged with tremendous blood energy, emanated an even greater life force than before. It seemed as if its strength had skyrocketed, becoming several times stronger. The residual shock waves of energy created by the clashes between the demon-sealing tombstone and the three-spirit were no longer able to affect him. "Isn't that Jiang Tianxing a member of your celestial artifact sect?" Yu Men yelled in a grave tone. He and Feng Eo currently stood at the edge of the frozen lake. They were looking down at the land of buried gods, which looked so vast that it resembled an abyss. The expression on Feng Eo's face became increasingly grim as he stared at every single one of Jiang Tianxing's movements. "Don't you know that he and Jiang Zhuzhe are evil remnants of Blood Fiend's sect?" Yu Men asked, snorting coldly. Feng Eo wore a dark expression, a complicated look in his eyes. He had yet to answer Yu Men's questions. Celestial Artifact Sect exposed the secrets behind the Graveyard of Gods, the 8 god corpses, and the spatial passageway we used to enter this place. Yu Men's brow was deeply furrowed. "So why does Jiang Tianxing know even more than you do?" Helpless in the face of Yu Men's interrogation, Feng Eo finally told him the truth. The information on the Graveyard of Gods that 10,000 Beast Mountain received did, indeed, originate from Celestial Artifact Sect. However, we got that information from Jiang Zhuzhe and his son, Jiang Tianxing, he explained. The two of them came to Celestial Artifact Sect 100 years ago, claiming that they knew of a great secret that would influence the future of the Land of Chaos. Jiang Zhuzhe wanted to borrow our strength to force the god corpses to emerge from the bottom of the sea and find the spatial passageway into the Graveyard of Gods. Everything that Celestial Artifact Sect knew about the Graveyard of Gods. You learned it from Jiang Zhuzhe? You? Men asked in startled disbelief. Correct. Feng Eo smiled bitterly. Why has Jiang Tianxing colluded with the Eastern barbarians? Yu Men asked. Feng Eo shook his head. I don't know. At this point, both Yu Men and Feng Eo figured out that the Jiang father-son pair had only sought out Celestial Artifact Sect to use them. The areas in which the first god corpses surfaced were close to Celestial Artifact Sect. With the assistance of the sect's elders, Jiang Zhuzhe used Celestial Artifact Sect's strength to extract those first few god corpses from the bottom of the sea. This also meant that, without celestial artifact sect's assistance, the god corpses wouldn't have appeared one after another, and the spatial passageway into the graveyard of gods never would have been found. The Jiang father-son pair had used celestial artifact sect to open the entrance to the graveyard of gods. They obviously had their own plan. The fact that they encouraged the Eastern barbarians to send the elites of the three great tribes into the graveyard of the gods clearly meant that their plan differed from that of the 9 great silver rank forces. From the moment that Jiang Tianxing transformed into a blood demon and began sucking the refined blood from the bodies of ancient elites, both Feng Yao and the Eastern barbarians understood that the father-son pair harbored sinister intentions. At this time, the demon-sealing tombstone hovered above the land of buried gods, continuously discharging dazzling godly lights to suppress the ancient giant, ape, and merfolk woman that the three spirits had possessed. Both sides were engaged in fierce battle. The only thing the demon-sealing tombstone cared about was sealing the 7 spirits. Regardless of how much trouble the demonified Jiang Tianxing caused, it just didn't see him as a target. Therefore, as soon as Jiang Tianxing became able to ignore the residual shock waves that swept across the land of buried gods, it meant that he could stay there and suck the blood from the body of one ancient elite after another. The blood demon would continuing growing more and more terrifying. Someone needs to stop the Jiang Tianxing in his blood demon form, Du Xiangyang exclaimed. Otherwise, the remains of those ancient elites will be destroyed and he will just get stronger and stronger. Once that happens, no one will be able to stop him. Qin Lai's group were the only ones who thought this. Everyone else present, San Yi and his Eastern barbarians, Feng Yao, and Yu Men, had noticed the enormous threat that Jiang Tianxing posed. Feng Yao and Yu Men wanted to attack him, but they didn't dare to venture into the land of buried gods. Therefore, they could only watch from the periphery. San Yi was hesitating. After obtaining the sun-killing bow, he now had the ability to kill Jiang Tianxing from a distance. However, the Eastern barbarians had an agreement with the Jiang father-son pair. The elders of the 3 great tribes trusted Jiang Zhuzhe trusted and planned to use him to raise the land of chaos. Jiang Tianxing's attention was currently focused on the remains of the ancient elites, not the Eastern barbarians. This was why San Yi couldn't come to a decision. If we don't kill Jiang Tianxing now, all of us will soon die. Harsh light shone from Luo Chen's eyes. He was the first to take action. 7 moon/. 7 sword beams shaped like crescent moons suddenly shot into the air high above the land of buried gods. Each crescent sword beam radiated a harsh, sharp aura. They shot toward Jiang Tianxing at the bottom of the frozen lake, each prismatic sword beam growing even more dazzling than before. At a glance, the 7 crescent-shaped sword beams actually made it seem as if the cold midnight moon had come crashing toward the ground. This was one of Luo Chen's greatest sword arts. Greya Wag! The blood demon roared at the sky, terrifying bloody light erupting from its eyes. Bloody screens of light appeared as it charged toward the incoming attack. Bloody screens flooded over the 7 cold crescents made of bright light, corrupting them with the thick fiendish aura of blood. The sword beams went dim, their light instantly disappearing. Quack! Luo Chen spat out a mouthful of blood as the harshness in his eyes suddenly softened. This signified that his sword will had dissipated. Jiang Tianxing's blood aura is too powerful. I can't kill him, and he'll only grow stronger with each passing second. After making this declaration, Luo Chen sat down and focused on treating his injuries. Qin Lai and the others weren't the only ones that had been watching Luo Chen attack. The Eastern barbarians, Yu Men and Feng Yao had been watching as well. They had seen everything and noticed. Immediately after he attacked Jiang Tianxing, Luo Chen spat out a mouthful of blood and sat down. Although he had initially been hesitant about what to do, an expression of wariness appeared on San Ye's face. At the same time, shock filled Feng Yao's and Yu Men's faces. The demonified Jiang Tianxing hadn't been killed. On the contrary, Luo Chen was actually the one to suffer severe injuries. Qin Lai, who cultivated the blood spirit art, could sense that multiple streams of fiendish blood energy had rushed into Luo Chen's body. This blood energy was relentless. It continued to ravage Luo Chen's nerves and internal organs even after his clash with the blood demon. Luochen didn't dare to waste any more time talking, immediately sat down, and started the recovery process. He went through his body eliminating these refined streams of fiendish blood energy, slashing each of them apart. Jiang Tianqing definitely wasn't a match for Luochen before transforming into that blood demon, Du Xiangyang exclaimed, his expression grim. Yet, now his terrifying aura scares even me. Sen Yi and Feng Yeo don't dare to do anything either. Xue Moyan shared his worry. They observed Luo Chen's attack and noticed that Jiang Tianqing is difficult to deal with. They're probably worried that he'll attack them if they enrage him. If no one kills him, Jiang Tianqing will just continue consuming the blood of those ancient elites and get stronger and stronger, Song Tingyu said, feeling a headache coming on. What are we going to do? For a time, no one had an idea what to do about Jiang Tianqing. They felt that they couldn't actually do anything. It seemed as if all they could do was just watch him like this. And, as expected, Jiang Tianqing did continue to act. This time, the blood form he had transformed into looked at the body of an ancient spirit turtle. This spirit turtle lay on its back, taking up hundreds of acres within the land of buried gods. It resembled an enormous, four-cornered table with curved sides. Strange patterns reminiscent of the Earth's mysterious pulse were engraved onto the belly of the spirit turtle's shell, which was turned up toward the sky. A green glow emanated from it. This potent green energy seemed to float around the spirit turtle like fine silk. It seemed capable of protecting the spirit turtle's body for an eternity. However, none of this was a problem for Jiang Tianqing, who had traded his rationality for madness and an instinctive thirst for blood. The blood demon leaped straight at the body of the ancient spirit turtle. Prack, prack, prack. The dense bloody light surrounding the blood demon's body fiercely clashed with the green energy around the spirit turtle's body. Bang! Surprisingly enough, the blood demon that was over 10 meters tall suddenly exploded as soon as it collided with the green energy. It erupted in a huge shower of bloody rain, filling the entire area with a pungent stench. Seeing this outcome, the eyes of everyone who stood at the edge of the frozen lake, including San Yi, Yu Men, Du Xiangyang, and Song Tingyu, lit up with approval. Well done, Pan Qianqian exclaimed. Qin Lai, however, wasn't even smiling. Xue Moyan's brow was deeply furrowed as well. Both of them were well aware of the miracles that blood fiend sex spirit arts were capable of. They could tell from the way the blood demon erupted, as well as the shower of bloody rain, that it was in fact executing one of blood fiend sex spirit arts, blood arts. Explode. This was a technique that used blood containing the user's soul consciousness to corrupt a target's heart and body. Bloody rain scattered through the air, penetrating the barrier of green energy the instant it recoiled from the clash and splashing onto the body of the ancient spirit turtle. The second each drop of blood splashed against the spirit turtle's exposed belly, they melted into it like water soaking into a sponge. All of the blood droplets vanished into the spirit turtle's body. Pan Qianqian cried. Everyone who had just attributed the blood demon's sudden eruption to good fortune once again grew serious. They noticed that something was amiss. Blub, be-blub, blub-blub. An odd, bubbling noise emanated from within the ancient spirit turtle's belly, almost as if its blood were boiling. Realization swept across Qin Lai's face. The blood refinement art. At this, Xue Moyan could barely contain her disbelief. Even after transforming into a blood demon, Jiang Tianqing can still execute blood fiend sex spirit arts? The Jiang father-son pair may be even more difficult to deal with than we thought, Qin Lai said, his expression so heavy that one could squeeze water from it. According to the records of the Blood Codex, a blood demon created from the blood of a fresh corpse could only exist as a blood puppet for a short period of time. It would have no intelligence and would not be able to execute any spirit arts. It would only have an inherent desire to kill and an instinctive thirst for blood. Back in the nether realm below the Scarlet Tide continent, Xueli had created a blood demon. That blood demon had been 100 times stronger than the one that Jiang Tianqing created. Its body had been tremendously large, and its fiendish blood energy overwhelmed both the heavens and the earth. However, the blood demons that Shueli were ultimately just puppets that couldn't execute spirit arts, let alone carry out strategies in combat. They didn't know how to feign exploding to bits, nor could they use blood arts. Explode to create a bloody rain capable of bypassing the defenses of the ancient spirit turtle's body and directly corrupting its flesh. The actions that Jiang Tianxing took today seemed impossible even for Shueli. Jiang Tianxing even surprised Qin Lai, who was familiar with the records of the Blood Codex. He knew that the blood demon art recorded in the first half of the Blood Codex was nowhere near as eerie or bizarre as this one. Could it be that the blood spirit art undergoes a qualitative change after a martial practitioner abandons themselves to evil ways, consumes human blood, and discards their rationality and conscience? Qin Lai inwardly asked himself. Bang! The ancient spirit turtle's body suddenly exploded. The green barrier that surrounded it dissipated since there was no longer any energy to maintain it. Once the spirit turtle's body burst apart, the essence within its flesh was quickly drained as well. Growl woof! A roar resounded from the blood demon as it exited the spirit turtle's remains and reformed itself. The fiendish bloody aura that it exuded was so potent that it could actually compare to a vast sea of blood. Its aura was so overwhelming that even the demon-sealing tombstone and the three spirits noticed the threat that it now represented. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! An icy tornado appeared of nowhere and rushed toward the blood demon, imbued with a freezing frost concept that threatened to turn everything to ice. A small figure could be seen at the center of this raging tornado, hovering amidst the frigid streams of howling wind. It resembled a goddess of ice ruling over that icy tornado. Jiayu! Gao Yu yelled from his position at the edge of the frozen lake, his harsh eyes flashing with excitement. With a frenzied roar, the blood demon charged toward the approaching ice spirit in its icy tornado, a shocking aura of blood surrounding its reformed body. An instant later, it rushed into the tornado and clashed with Jiayu, who was currently possessed by the ice spirit. Rays of bloody light shot from the tornado and spread in every direction. Incredibly sharp blades of icy light slashed at the blood demon. The power of absolute frost enveloped the blood demon with layer upon layer of ice like waves of water, seeking to reduce the blood demon to a bloody ice sculpture. The blood demon howled angrily, madly struggling against the power of the ice spirit. A fiendish blood aura capable of destroying the world shone from its bloody eyes. The silhouettes of the spirit turtle and the wood race clansmen appeared in the bloody screens of light around the blood demon, seemingly assisting it by empowering its aura and making it strong enough to resist the ice spirit's sealing power. This, Du Xiangyang was dumbstruck. When everyone else could only watch Jiang Tianxing plunder one body of an ancient elite after another, the ice spirit actually came out of hiding. The ice spirit wanted to stop the blood demon from destroying the land of buried gods. As the master of the forbidden land of ice and the guardian spirit of the land of buried gods, the ice spirit seemed intent on both leaving the graveyard of gods and protecting it at the same time. It wanted to use the graveyard of gods as a future source of power. It would never allow the blood demon to continue devouring the bodies of the ancient elites resting in the land of buried gods. The ice spirit always believed that these remains belonged to it, and it alone. This turn of events stunned Qin Lai. It looks like we don't need to do anything, he said. The ice spirit had actually appeared at a critical moment to seal the blood demon that Jiang Tianxing had transformed into. It would freeze it, preventing it from further damaging the remains of the ancient elites in the land of buried gods. This sudden development turned the situation in the desolate plain of the frozen lake into two battles. One in which the demon-sealing tombstone fought the earth, metal, and water spirits, and one in which the ice spirit fought the blood demon. All of these combatants were equally matched and completely focused on fighting. It was as if they had all strangers that were unconcerned with one another. Let's just observe, Du Xiangyang said, his eyes narrowed. He sat down and took out a couple of spirit stones to recover his strength. All we need to do right now is watch. The rest of the group exchanged glances, then followed his lead and sat down as well. Considering the battle taking place in the land of buried gods, and bit of strength they managed to recover would better prepare them for any shocking changes that could occur in an instant. Qin Lai also sat down as he watched the battles below with astonishment, waiting for something new to occur. Swoosh! In the next moment, a bloody light suddenly emerged from the space between Qin Lai's eyebrows. The bloody bone dragon and the body of the blood progenitor, which had been sucked into the soul-suppressing orb, surprising flew out along with that light. Paddock! The bloodthirsty dragon had become several times smaller than its original size and was now a concave object about half an arm's length. It looked like a sanguine dragon bone and glittered with translucent, bloody light. The blood progenitor's body, on the other hand, was the same size as before, resembling a translucent, bloody ice sculpture. Swoosh! The first half of the blood codex, which had been hidden within Qin Lai's spatial ring, emerged without warning. With the appearance of a bloody bone fragment, it suddenly shot into the blood progenitor's chest, vanishing in a flash of light. Whoosh! The moment the first half of the blood codex emerged, the concave object that lay quietly on the ground, which was the bloodthirsty dragon's newest shape, transformed into an arm guard. It floated into the air, firmly attaching itself to the left arm of the blood progenitor. In that instant, the blood progenitor's body erupted with brilliant, bloody light. This is... Qin Lai's group stared at the blood progenitor's body in shock. They watched as the body emitted bloody light. The bloodthirsty dragon transformed into its arm guard, and the first half of the blood codex emerged from Qin Lai's spatial ring as if summoned. At this moment, it seemed as if the blood progenitor, although utterly soulless, was about to awaken. No one understood what kind of breathtaking turn of events could have occurred. Everyone simply looked to Qin Lai subconsciously, hoping that he'd be able to provide an explanation and tell them what kind of magic had taken place within the blood progenitor's body. All because his third eye had devoured the blood progenitor's body and the bloodthirsty dragon, and had now spit them back out. They thought that Qin Lai could explain everything. However, Qin Lai seemed just as shocked and confused as they were. Prack, prack, prack. Bloody lines writhed across the blood progenitor's body like bolts of lightning. Upon closer inspection, it seemed as if someone were holding a brush and painting something on the body. Qin Lai's eyes trembled as he suddenly cried out, surprise and realization covering his face. He now understood what in spirit realm those bloody lines on the blood progenitor's body were. They were forming a spirit diagram, one of the most ancient, complicated kinds. It was a miraculous spirit diagram that Elder Mohai had referred to as an ancient diagram. Complicated spirit diagrams covered the blood progenitor's translucent skin like a densely packed, tightly woven spider web. They stretched across his neck, arms, hands, legs, chest, and abdomen. Unfathomable spirit diagrams were engraved into every inch of the blood progenitor's flesh. The bloody lines formed the network of the spirit diagram. There were millions of them, seemingly as numerous as the starry rivers of the galaxy, and just as mysterious and vast. Qin Lai paid close attention to the spirit diagrams, and he noticed there were dozens of the 4 basic spirit diagrams: spirit storage, spirit gathering, amplification, and strengthening. Each of the 4 basic spirit diagrams were actually incredibly complex and required several thousands of spirit threads to be drawn and portrayed. Yet now there were actually dozens of these spirit diagrams inscribed into the blood progenitor's body, each having been shrunk to several times smaller than their usual size. Aside from the 4 basic spirit diagrams, there were also dozens of other larger spirit diagrams on his body. They were wondrous spirit diagrams that were at least 10 times more complicated than the basic ones. These spirit diagrams had far exceeded Qin Lai's comprehension and were way more complex and miraculous than any spirit diagram he had ever seen before. To him, every single one of them resembled a vast, boundless world that contained indescribable wonders and secrets. Both basic spirit diagrams and extremely complex ancient diagrams had been inlaid to form numerous densely packed compound spirit diagrams. These compound spirit diagrams were branded into the blood progenitor's body like bloody tattoos that contained shocking amounts of wondrous power. They resembled dense spider webs that covered every part of the progenitor's body. Heavens! Du Xiangyang exclaimed in disbelief. How did so many spirit diagrams appear on it in such a short time? This question was on everyone else's minds as well. There hadn't been a single line of blood on the blood progenitor's body when it and the bloodthirsty dragon were absorbed into Qin Lai's third eye. How long had it been since then? The blood progenitor's body had probably only been inside of it for about 15 minutes. How could the body change so much in so little time? What in spirit realm did Qin Lai, or rather his third eye, do? A bitter, frustrated look on his face. Qin Lai scratched his head and tried to sort out the thoughts in his mind. All of a sudden, a brilliant bloody light radiated from the countless bloody lines on the blood progenitor's left arm. It seemed as if many of the miraculous spirit diagrams on it had been activated. Surprisingly, the blood progenitor mirrored Qin Lai's movements, scratching its head with its eyes closed. It literally did the same thing as Qin Lai. This sight stunned everyone. Unable to control herself, Song Tingyu was the first to react. "Qin Lai, try moving in a different way," she immediately cried out, her eyes overflowing with a shocking intensity. "Moving in a different way?" Qin Lai frowned and casually shook his head. The ancient diagram on the blood progenitor's neck activated at the same time, glowing with dazzling bloody light. The blood progenitor's body followed Qin Lai's movements and shook its head as well, completely mirrored his movements. At this moment, it was as if the two of them shared one mind. The blood progenitor's body would move as Qin Lai did. Not even the slightest discrepancy could be seen. "Try it again," Du Xiangyang exclaimed excitedly. "Try out a different movement." Qin Lai's eyes lit up. Under the watchful eye of the rest of the group, he suddenly began moving, waving his arms and swinging his legs forcefully. The blood progenitor's body moved in perfect sync with him, copying every one of his movements without a single mistake. Furthermore, it even kicked an enormous icy stone the size of a house as it swung its legs, reducing it to smithereens. "Qin Lai, try channeling the blood spirit art." Xue Moyan took a deep breath, her supple breasts jiggling noticeably. "Quick, hurry up and try it," Du Xiangyang urged. "All right," Qin Lai said and began channeling the blood spirit art. Boom! All of the spirit diagrams on the blood progenitor's body began to glow like the stars in the sky, glittering with dazzling bloody light. The blood progenitor's body unleashed a dense, fiendish aura of blood, making Du Xiangyang and the others feel as if their blood were surging within them. Their faces flushed completely red, and they were terrified that their blood would cause them to explode at any moment. The last time they felt this way was when the bloodthirsty dragon had charged at them earlier. "Try executing spirit skills." Xue Moyan's eyes glittered with anticipation. Wait a minute. Give us time to move away first," Du Xiangyang cried loudly. Qin Lai looked dumbfounded. "This blood energy is too strong for us," Song Tingyu said as she moved away, a shocked expression on her face. "You too can endure it because you cultivate the blood spirit art. We don't, so we feel like every drop of blood inside of our bodies is being triggered. We might explode at any moment." Du Xiangyang and the others repeatedly nodded in agreement, quickly departing before Qin Lai and Xue Moyan's eyes. "Try it," Xue Moyan exclaimed. Qin Lai attempted to channel the blood spirit art and form a blood-weeping ghost claw, a sinister, ghastly claw of blood slowly materializing in front of his left hand. The blood progenitor's body stood to Qin Lai's right, whereas Xue Moyan stood in front of him. This was why, before he could see what changes occurred to the blood progenitor's body, he first saw Xue Moyan cover her mouth in complete shock. Off in the distance, Du Xiangyang yelled, "Holy crap!" Only then did Qin Lai look to his right. A sinister claw of blood quietly floated before the blood progenitor's body. It was as large as a mountain, looked as if it belonged to an enormous bloodthirsty demon, and contained a seemingly endless amount of violent, fiendish energy. The terrible power the claw emanated made it feel as if it could envelop the sky and bathe the world in blood. The blood progenitor had mimicked Qin Lai's movements and unleashed a blood-weeping ghost claw of its own. This ghastly claw was nearly 1,000 times larger than Qin Lai's, and the destructive aura it radiated was also 1,000 times stronger. This was the real blood-weeping ghost claw. "See, can you put it away now?" Pan Xianxian cried, her lips trembling non-stop. In the face of that enormous blood-weeping ghost claw, the thumping of her heart resembled an earthquake. Her heart beat so fast that she felt like she would collapse from the pressure. Even though she was currently sitting on the ground and focusing her thoughts, trying to calm down her chaotic heart, she couldn't stop the abnormal flow of her blood. The pressure of the blood-weeping ghost claw left her on the verge of breaking down. Luo Chun, Du Xiangyang, Song Tingyu, and Xie Jingshuan's faces looked flushed as well. All of them struggled to resist the pressure and looked like they might fall over at any moment. Like Pan Xianxian, they also couldn't endure the terrifying power of the giant blood claw. So Qin Lai hurriedly withdrew his strength. When his blood-weeping ghost claw turned into a ray of bloody light and returned to his body, the gigantic ghastly claw unleashing an endless fiendish aura of blood also vanished into the blood progenitor's body. Phew! The rest of the group let out a long sigh and instantly collapsed to the ground. The ghastly claw had nearly pushed them to their breaking points. Now all of them understood what had happened. Qin Lai's third eye had clearly executed some sort of extraordinary, secret puppet art on the blood progenitor's body. The myriad bloody lines that formed the miraculous spirit diagrams served as the ropes that bound it. The binding spirit diagrams had clearly transformed the blood progenitor's body into a puppet that Qin Lai could control. It had been turned into an amazing killing tool that could channel the blood spirit art and even use the bloodthirsty dragon to wreak widespread havoc. What in spirit realm was Qin Lai's third eye? How did it cause such a terrifying change in the blood progenitor's body in just 15 minutes? Everyone looked at Qin Lai once more, their gazes falling right on the space between his eyebrows. They looked like they were itching to dig into his head and find out